Chapter 281, Ethan sells out Carl. Ethan, you've completely misunderstood me. Death God, Carl didn't expect Ethan's suspicion to be so deep. He'd already offered assurances, yet Ethan stood his ground. Carl could only exhale heavily. How can you ever trust that I'm sincere? Sincerity? Ethan echoed, raising two pale fingers to his chin in a mock gesture of thought. Listen, Queen, I've taken a massive hit this time. Every demon under my command was wiped out, and even demon number 1 was nearly crippled. Unless you're ready to make up for my losses, there's no way I'll ever bow to you. Ethan recognized the moment as his golden opportunity. From the puzzled look on Carl's face, it was clear the Death God had no idea how badly Ethan's side had suffered in this sector of the galaxy. And if Carl was in the dark, well, why shouldn't Ethan exploit that? Carl glanced at him coolly. Ethan, you already possess the technology to resurrect your demons. All you lack is the genetic material. At once, Carl realized exactly what Ethan was after, and exactly what leverage he'd lost. Ethan watched in tense silence as Liang Bing faced the looming figure of the god of death, Carl. Over centuries, Carl's ravenous civilization had waged endless wars across the cosmos just to sate his morbid curiosity. Now, unexpectedly, he was offering them aid. Carl's voice rolled like thunder. I might have a solution for you, he said. You know how I study death. My people orchestrate slaughter everywhere in the universe to amuse me, and in the process I've amassed a vast archive of genetic material. I can lend you some of it. Liang Bing's eyes widened. You'd actually give that to me? She asked, disbelief and hope warring on her face. Carl's lips curved into a thin, knowing smile. Don't mistake this for charity, he warned. I won't hand over my entire collection at once. If I gave you everything now, what guarantee would I have that you'd still need me later? Relief and excitement replaced Liang Bing's surprise. I never expected such generosity, she admitted. With those samples, I can finally begin upgrading my demon warriors, just in time to meet Heishi's angelic legions. Ethan drew in a steadying breath. Heishi's army was already on the move, and their defenses were thin. But with Carl's genetic trove at their disposal, the balance of power might yet tilt in their favor. Liang Bing had spent centuries gathering strength for her demon legions. But once Earth was absorbed as a vassal world by the Tiandao civilization, she lost all freedom to recruit or breed her forces there. Sitting across from Carl, the god of death, she steepled her fingers and said, All this talk of war is pointless if we don't have the resources. First, we must secure fresh genetic material. And remember, to reincarnate a demon, we need a living sacrifice. I won't risk returning to Earth. Fraser falls under angelic jurisdiction now. Find me another planet teeming with intelligent life. Although proposing this plan laid her intentions bare to Carl, Liang Bing had no choice. She still didn't know where Ethan stood, whether he would merge with Hexi or allow the angels to align fully with Tiandao. This strategy was purely a contingency. Should Ethan truly bind himself to Hexi, and should the angels fully integrate with the Tiandao order, Liang Bing would have to flee immediately. She had learned the hard way that resurrecting her demon army required more than raw ambition. Without the right preparations, strategic genetic caches, secure sanctuaries, and reliable sacrifices, her armies were doomed to annihilation. Every time she began to rise, her foes crushed her. Every time she fell, she was forced to vanish into hiding for centuries. This time, she would not repeat those mistakes. When Liang Bing first arrived on Earth, her opening salvo was to turn Huang Village into a massacre and unleash her super demon virus on the unsuspecting populace. These atrocities weren't merely a means to resurrect her demon legions. She craved the utter destruction of all life. The Demon Queen's reputation for terror throughout the cosmos was well earned. A cool voice cut through the tension. Then let us deploy the Tao Ti. Liang Bing's brow shot up. The Tao Ti? That primal beast's reincarnation potential is subpar, hardly enough for what we need. Her eyes flickered with a strange light. Carl, the god of death, sounded so calm, so unflinching. She knew this was no idle suggestion. Carl had spent millennia nurturing both the Tao Ti and the Great Wolf civilizations, bending them to his will to bolster his forces. Carl, she said quietly, though her words carried a razor's edge, are you truly prepared to sacrifice your vassal civilizations to resurrect my demon army? If you can truly do what you claim, then I have no reason to trust your sincerity, Liang Bing replied, her voice wary. If the Taoti had indeed been grafted with demon genes, they would field countless bestial demon warriors, and given the Taoti's level of technology, each one would far outmatch an ordinary mutant. A demonic horde of that magnitude would be a terrifying force. But would Carl actually go through with it? Death God Carl's reply was calm, almost clinical, yet every word carried an icy edge. The gluttonous civilization's potential has run its course. Besides, the Taoti Armada marched with Hua Ye into the Angel Nebula. Few, if any, will have returned. Bereft of their army's protection, the Taoti people are nothing more than lambs led to slaughter. Why expend precious resources defending a civilization that has lost its value? Better to let them demonstrate their worth in one final, decisive trial. Since ascending to his phantom state, Carl had abandoned all mortal emotions. No hormones, no biases remained to cloud his judgment, only ruthless, unflinching logic. Death God Carl regarded everything and everyone as either a tool to be used or a liability to be discarded. Liang Bing, whose reputation for icy resolve was well earned, couldn't help but let a bitter laugh escape her lips. Carl, you're ruthless. The Taoti have bled for you in the north and south. They've earned your gratitude, and yet, while their armies still fight under your banner, you're already laying plans for their funeral rites. Carl's expression never wavered. His words were measured, almost detached. Liang Bing, our fates are intertwined. The destiny of the Taoti rests with you. I don't abandon them lightly. What I offer instead is proof of my commitment. He paused, his tone colder. If reviving your demon legions requires the sacrifice of a vassal race, then so be it. Surely that shows the length I'm willing to go. A chill ran down Liang Bing's spine. She crossed her arms against the sudden cold. Honestly, you terrify me, you old scoundrel. You're not the type who crosses a river only to burn the bridge behind you. She turned away, her voice dropping to a whisper. Still, the queen won't look kindly on the annihilation of the Taoti. Carl leaned back, a faint shadow of amusement flickering in his eyes. Let her worry, he said softly. In the void age to come, only the strong will survive, and only I decide who remains. Above them, distant thunder rolled across the war-torn plains, a reminder that the die was already cast. The Taoti stood on the brink of oblivion. Pawn, sacrifice, or savior, their fate hung in the balance of Carl's uncompromising ambition. All right, Liang Bing said with a reluctant smile. Since you're feeling generous, I'll trust you once more. A wise choice, came the rumbling reply. Death God Carl's laughter echoed through the chamber, rich with amusement. Liang Bing rolled her eyes inwardly. How could a corpse truly be in high spirits? Very well, then, Carl continued smoothly. Sit back and wait. She simply returned his smile. Carl could be plotting anything, trying to lure her into betraying Tiandao or Ethan for all she cared. The only thing that mattered was the reward at the end, and she wasn't about to turn it down. In fact, she already planned to take full credit once she reported back to Ethan. Later, she knelt before him. My lord, she said, masking her excitement with deference, Carl, the grandson of the god of death, has approached me. He wants to join forces again. Ethan, who had been monitoring the entire exchange from the shadows, let out a resigned sigh. A bootlicker never ends up with anything, he thought. Chapter 282, Triangle and Sun. Wukong, Ethan turned to Liang Bing. Then it's settled. You'll be in charge of luring Carl, the god of death, to our doorstep. Liang Bing's eyes widened. Carl's grandson? Deceiving him won't be easy, your majesty. Ethan gave a confident shrug. Convince him to show up, and I'll make it worth your while. Her gaze sharpened. What sort of reward are we talking about? A black hole engine? A stellar engine? Ethan smiled. Better than that. I'll grant you a 10-band Galaxy Power Void engine. Liang Bing could barely believe her ears. A 10-band engine was an honor normally reserved for figures like Heavenly Concubine Du Changwei or Heavenly Queen Qilin. For the Emperor to offer one to her, it was more than she dared hope. At her side, Rena's cheeks flushed. She'd longed for a void engine herself, but had been too shy to voice the request. Now she bowed her head, grateful to remain in the background. Ethan's expression grew serious. With the Tiandao civilization having just accepted the Liang surrender, we can't afford any missteps. If Carl comes, and if we control him, our advantage will be decisive. Liang Bing and Reina exchanged a determined glance. The plan was set in motion. Ethan watched as Liang Bing's eyes flickered with determination. Now more than ever, we must bridge the divide between the Liang and Tiandao civilizations, he said quietly. I won't stand in your way. Liang Bing exhaled in relief. You have my word, she replied, her voice steady. Though Ethan knew how deeply she relied on her bond with the death god Karl, how easily she could have requested a void engine, or even laid claim to Hua Ye's coveted fifth-generation divine body, she still hesitated to trust him completely. That distrust of Karl ran too deep. Ethan simply nodded. They both understood what was at stake. Thousands of light-years away, on Blue Star, the Great Black Wall's command hall was tense. A holographic display flickered with casualty figures. Hengbing City losses now stand at 28,867, reported the staff officer. The 2nd Navy Self-Defense Force is unresponsive. Admiral Lianfeng snatched up a remote control and cut the broadcast abruptly. He stared at the blank screen for a long moment before speaking in a low, measured tone. All evidence points to a strike launched from the East China Sea corridor. Our sensors tracked the intruders, vanishing along that trajectory. Hours later, several fighter squadrons patrolling the East China Sea received alarm codes. Their comm channels crackled with the same grim news. A new wave of terror attacks was already underway, and Blue Star's defenses were scrambling to hold the line. Chapter 7. The Triangular Entity. 3 friendly fighters just went down. Authorize weapons fire. The pilot's urgent voice crackled through the comlink. Commander Ethan Whitman froze. Hold your fire, he ordered. Our readings show conventional missiles won't penetrate. Pull back 5,000 meters and maintain formation. Copy that. Crane flight is withdrawing to 5 clicks and holding position, the pilot replied, disappointment heavy in his tone. Ethan opened his mouth to argue, but the pilot beat him to it. Sir, I still don't get it. The Taudi-class dreadnought had energy shielding, and our missiles barely scratched it. This new target has no shields at all, yet our firepower is just as useless. Ethan pressed his lips together to suppress his frustration. Arguing won't help. We follow orders. He cut the channel, rose from the command chair, and surveyed the bridge. Every pair of eyes was fixed on him. Everyone, listen up. Suit up. Ice Bear Company, assemble on Deck 5. This adversary could be even more dangerous than the Taudi dreadnought. He paused, then spoke more quietly. And send word immediately to Queen Qilin and Princess Du Changwei. They need a full situation report. Moments later, the white-uniformed members of Ice Bear Company filed in. Their leader, Sergeant Qilin, younger sister of the ruling queen, stepped forward. Sir, she greeted. Now that we're all here, Ethan said, it's time you learned exactly who or what we're facing. Qilin lifted an eyebrow. At last, who is our enemy? Ethan met her gaze. Legends name them the triangular entities, 3-dimensional life forms whose bodies are formed of perfect tetrahedrons. They've never been documented before. Our scanners can't penetrate their molecular structure, and even our most powerful ordnance is reduced to dust on impact. A hush fell across the room. Ethan let the silence hang for a moment before adding, Prepare yourselves. We go to battle against the unknown, and we must find a way to stop them before they make planetfall. Ethan settled into the observation deck's low seat, the stars outside the viewport shimmering like distant lanterns. Across from him, Lianfeng's holographic form coalesced into view, her serene features illuminated by soft blue light. Beside her, Qilin hovered, his crystalline wings refracting the starlight into spectral patterns against the ceiling. Lianfeng inclined her head. It's a long tale, she began, voice calm but weighty. It starts with the Kamigawa Body Wars. 50,000 years ago, the Kamigawa civilization clashed first with the triangular body and then with the beast body. Ethan leaned forward. Triangular body? A life form bred in the ocean, Lianfeng explained. On many worlds, intelligent species evolve from the sea. On ours, for example, dolphins surpass human brain development by over 5%. In the Kamigawa galaxy, the ocean's crowning achievement was a species we call the triangle. She waved a hand, and a holomap of swirling galaxies appeared. Historical records show that the largest of these triangular civilizations declared war on Kamigawa, seeking to prove their superiority. Despite their advanced neural capacity, greater even than the angel civilizations, they ultimately lost. Ethan frowned at the map. But the system's still called Divine River, not the Triangle System. Precisely, Lian Feng said. Out of respect for the Kamigawa victory, that sector was renamed the Divine River System. Later, when the Kamigawa people encountered the angel civilization, they discovered a shared evolutionary path. Both species were descended from the same body form. Recognizing each other as intellectual equals, they joined forces in a final physical conflict to decide which would dominate the known universe. She paused, letting the enormity of that ancient alliance sink in. The holographic stars pulsed quietly as Ethan absorbed the implications. When Lian Feng fell silent, Qilin's crystalline eyes glowed brighter. So you're saying that, despite their vastly different origins, Kamigawa and angels fought side by side against the triangles, and that victory established their form as the dominant intelligence across countless galaxies, he asked. Ethan exchanged a glance with Lian Feng, then turned back to Qilin. Exactly, he said. And what follows from that alliance? Well, that's where our journey really begins. Ethan shifted uneasily in his seat as he listened to Qilin's explanation. Why must we keep attacking them? Is it only because their bodies are different? He asked. Qilin sighed. No, it's more than physical disparity. The gods and angels don't wage war for territory or power alone. They lead with ideas of kindness, justice, and the mastery of nature. They taught mortals how to cultivate life, to bend rivers, to tame storms. Over centuries, that wisdom gave them the upper hand against the triangular civilization, which fought purely by brute force. Eventually, Holy Kesha was proclaimed the supreme deity of Kamigawa. But that doesn't mean the triangular race is weak, Ethan pressed. They could leap ahead if they harness the right innovations. Lian Feng's expression turned grave. Precisely. Right now, we've only just beaten back the demon and glutton hordes. We barely had time to rebuild before news came that the triangular civilization has re-emerged. We know almost nothing about their technology or tactics. We can't afford to underestimate them. He paused, scanning the gathered officers and field commanders around the long conference table. That's why we've called everyone here. They've been spotted in the eastern sector of the East China Sea. So far, 3 of our joint patrol reconnaissance planes have vanished without a trace. We need to prepare for anything. Ethan clenched his fists. Then we'll need new intel, stealth drones, encrypted signal intercepts, anything that can tell us what they're planning before they strike again. Qilin nodded. Agreed. We'll mount a covert operation at once. If the triangular civilization truly holds an edge in unorthodox weaponry, we'll find it and neutralize it before they can use it against us. Outside, the wind whipped against the tall windows, carrying the distant rumble of thunder. As the storm gathered, so too did the heavy weight of the coming conflict. And Ethan knew that this time, the fate of Kamigawa might rest on the secrets they uncovered and the speed with which they acted. Ethan sat in the dimly lit briefing room of the Zhongbinglian headquarters, flanked by a handful of fellow super-gene warriors. At the front of the chamber, General Lian Feng's stern face was reflected in the holoprojector's glow, which now displayed a shimmering triangular emblem, the only clue to the mysterious Triangle civilization. At present, we have no reliable information on the Triangle civilization's combat capabilities or tactics. General Lian Feng began, voice low but resonant. He paused, letting the weight of their ignorance settle over the room. Our orders from command are to make first contact. We must learn why they've come to Earth. He tapped a hand against the console at his side, and the holoscreen shifted to show images of the alien ships, a sleek, 3-sided design that hovered silently above our atmosphere. Ideally, we'll establish a peaceful coexistence, but if they prove hostile, we'll need to be ready to defend our planet. A murmur rippled through the assembled warriors. Ethan felt a familiar thrill of tension in his chest. Every mission carried risk, but this, facing an unknown civilization with unknown technology, was unlike anything they'd ever attempted. General Lian Feng's expression darkened. Originally, we planned to send Sun Wukong. His clone ability would let him engage and withdraw at will. He was perfect for a reconnaissance and diplomacy role. But Sun Wukong vanished from Earth several weeks ago. We've had no contact since. He swept his gaze across the room until it rested on Ethan and the others. Which means this assignment falls to all of you. There is no fallback. No second team. If we fail, or if you fail, there's no telling what will happen to Earth. Silence followed, heavy and unbroken. The Triangle civilization remained an enigma. Were they explorers, conquerors, or something else entirely? Even for each of these super-gene warriors, enhanced beyond ordinary human limits, the prospect of stepping into the unknown sparked a flicker of doubt. Ethan exchanged a look with Commander May, whose calm, steady presence had carried their squad through countless dangerous missions. He saw in her eyes the same questions racing through his mind. Can we really trust our orders? Can we survive this? He straightened in his seat, squared his shoulders, and met General Lianfeng's gaze. We understand the stakes, sir, he said quietly but firmly. We'll be ready. Lianfeng inclined his head once, solemnly. Prepare your gear. The transport launches at 600 hours. Whatever happens out there, remember, you are humanity's ambassadors. Act with caution, but act with courage. As the briefing room's lights dimmed and the team dispersed, Ethan allowed himself a single, steadying breath. The fate of Earth, perhaps of both worlds, now depended on their next move. And for better or worse, there was no turning back. Sun Wukong's disappearance, as Lianfeng had claimed, was nothing more than a ruse. In truth, he had slipped away to seek out the newly reborn Tiandao civilization. At Erst, he lingered on memories of Huaguo Mountain, its jade cliffs, the sacred peach groves, the laughter of old friends, but when he returned to the wider world, he discovered it had been utterly transformed. The once proud Liyang civilization had vanished without a trace. Rumor held that its survivors had fled to join the ancient Krypton civilization, only for that society to shed its old name in favor of something grander, Tiandao. The very notion of heavenly way. Tiandao stirred something deep within him. Without so much as a word to anyone, he set out on his own. I, Sun Wukong, he vowed, will see with my own eyes what Tiandao has become. Chapter 283. Diamond Bracelet, Demon-Slaying Platform, Sun Wukong. Your Majesty, a monkey is attacking our war stars. At the very heart of the Milky Way, the Heavenly Tao Civilization's Supreme Court stood fully exposed, ringed by 100 battle stars. Liang Bing's eyes gleamed with envy. 100 war carriers in its immediate defense, and 50 more deployed to intercept the Angel Civilization's fleet, made a total of 150. The Liu clan's riches were legendary. Who could say how many additional vessels they'd kept hidden? With their reputation for cunning, undisclosed war stars seemed all but certain. Liang Bing's suspicions proved correct. Ethan had staked out a territory in the Super Seminary universe that no one could have foreseen, a void engine battle star. By itself, a battle star was already advanced. A blessed one could even clash with void warriors on equal footing. But a battle star equipped with a void engine? Such a fortress in space would be virtually untouchable, impervious to seizure or sabotage by Huaye and Ruoning's own void engines. In the entire Super Seminary universe, no one has ever dared build a combat celestial body out of pure void matter, and for a very simple reason. Nobody is that rich. Even Death God Karl couldn't afford the staggering amounts of void matter required. And even if only the engine used void matter, while the hull itself was made of ordinary materials, the demand would still be astronomical. Where Karl found so much supply remains a mystery. Ethan stood before the great gates, his voice quiet and steady. As for that monkey, he said, it'll do him good to lie dead. Sun Wukong charged the entrance the instant he arrived, as if he expected to find nothing more than the abandoned shell of the Liyang civilization's Nantianmen fortress. Had he approached politely, requested an audience, Ethan would have let him enter without consequence. But the Monkey King's alliance with Blue Star was an open secret in every star system, and reckless aggression against this citadel could only earn him a swift, fatal response. Frankly, Ethan had zero interest in uncovering Sun Wukong's hidden gadgets or secret functions. What the monkey didn't realize was that this Tiandao civilization was nothing like those he'd toppled before. Here, every challenge would be met with the full might of a people determined to protect their own. All of the heavenly soldiers and generals of the Heavenly Tao civilization were third-generation super soldiers, and they had been joined by warriors from the Liyang civilization. Together, they encircled Sun Wukong so completely that no gap remained for him to slip through. Each soldier wore Suian armor and carried Suian weapons, still among the hardest materials in the known universe, second only to the legendary Dark Suyin. When Sun Wukong lashed out with his invincible staff, 2 soldiers intercepted the blow while the rest closed in, blades raised. Flight offered no salvation. As soon as he took to the air, his pursuers spread their own great wings and followed him into the sky, then dove after him when he dove toward the earth. Worse, every one of these super soldiers carried a functional supergene, one that converts dark energy directly into kinetic force. Individually, they were paragons of strength and natural power. Together, they were an unbreakable wall. After a few clashes, Sun Wukong had to admit, brute force alone would not win this fight. Sun Wukong's dark energy reserves were already taxed to their limits. If he couldn't hold them, he'd be cut to pieces in an instant. He'd reckoned without the full power of the Heavenly Tao's elite. Some of their soldiers and generals could convert dark energy into blistering thermal blasts, launching a relentless flare bombardment. The arrows they loosed were the equivalent of incendiary, armor-piercing rounds. Even his legendary flesh and bone, said to be virtually indestructible, shuddered at each impact. Just a few of those volleys left him reeling. The thermal flares seared through his defenses, scorching where no blade ever had. Regret churned in his chest. He'd been far too confident. He'd believed the remnants of the Liang civilization were merely auxiliary to the Heavenly Tao forces, that the Heavenly Tao itself lacked any real strength beyond its name. After all, the so-called God King Ethan, whom he'd dismissed as leading only a ragtag handful of warriors, had seemed no threat at all. Clearly, he'd been mistaken. Bound and under heavy guard, Sun Wukong was dragged before Ethan's throne room. Every step felt like a confession of his folly. When the gate swung open and he faced Ethan once more, he realized just how badly he'd miscalculated, and how completely he was now at the mercy of the man he'd so casually underestimated. Ethan's gaze burned cold as he faced Sun Wukong. "You didn't come to Blue Star to safeguard your master's legacy. You came to make my life difficult. Let's see whether you can survive my Heavenly Way demon-slaying platform, just as your myths claim." Without giving Sun Wukong a chance to answer, Ethan snapped his fingers. A squad of armored heavenly soldiers and generals surged forward, seized the stunned monkey god, and dragged him toward the ominous device at the heart of the platform. Officially called the God-Killing Engine, Dark Energy Data Decomposition Device, the apparatus was notorious for utterly annihilating any super soldier or deity unlucky enough to face it, leaving no trace behind unless a backup existed elsewhere. Sun Wukong's eyes were vacant as they approached the platform. His dark energy reserves had been drained, but how could so many powerful celestial warriors have consumed it so swiftly? After all, he had lain dormant for centuries, building up a vast store of energy. The answer lay in their dishonorable tactics. Ignoring the martial world's code of honor, one general smote Sun Wukong across the head with his Vajra bracelet, a void-forged weapon designed to shatter defenses and disperse inner strength. A crackling shockwave tore through the monkey god's defenses, and he staggered, clearly dazed by the underhanded blow. Ethan watched impassively as his captors prepared to lock Sun Wukong onto the platform's central pillar. In a matter of moments, that pillar would unleash its dark energy scanners and data decomposers, ensuring that no fragment of Sun Wukong's power, or his very essence, would remain. The assembly's hush fell over the chamber as the machinery hummed to life, waiting only for Ethan's single command to obliterate one of Legend's greatest figures. Ethan's defenses shuddered under the onslaught of the Void Strike, every one of the gene engines in his body stuttering and dying. He had never anticipated that the Vajra bracelet's magic weapon could so completely paralyze him. Gasping and unsteady, Ethan realized he was at the mercy of his enemy, helpless, cornered, and facing imminent death. A cold realization struck him. The demon-slaying platform, even the Liang civilization, built one of those. In the vast hierarchy of the Tiandao civilizations, Liang was little more than a backwater. Its armies could scarcely ripple the great celestial legions. Yet here he was, crushed by the very same demon-purging apparatus that had made Liang bow to heaven's authority. If Ethan had foreseen this humiliation, he never would have come looking for trouble. Now, however, there was no turning back. The platform's crimson runes flared to life around him, and with a blinding pulse of scarlet light, Ethan was reduced to ash, erased in an instant. Watching that final flash, General Panjen's heart twisted with conflicting emotions. The ruthless monkey warrior was gone, vanquished where so many others had found only defeat. And though Panjen had every reason to despise Ethan's pride and recklessness, he could not help but respect the fearless general he had been. The man, no, the monkey, had fallen. But his legacy of defiance and command would not soon be forgotten. Ethan sat heavily on his throne, anger coiling in his chest. He'd always loathed his opponent's stubbornness, but now that the enemy had been utterly destroyed, Panjen and the Liang Empire could finally breathe easier. An obsession that had poisoned the realm for years was at last gone, though its extinction had come at the steepest price. "Your Majesty, we've just received word from Blue Star," concubine Tian announced, stepping forward with a bowed head. Ethan gestured for her to continue. "Speak." She met his gaze. "The triangle has appeared at this crucial moment, and our forces have already laid waste to the city." He swore under his breath. He had known his own rash decision would accelerate events beyond anyone's control, but he hadn't anticipated the triangle's arrival so soon. Blue Star's settlers were utterly unprepared for such strangers, so Commander Xin Zhao has volunteered to open negotiations with the triangle's emissaries, whatever their intentions may be. Chapter 284, Void Controller. "Xin Zhao," Lianfeng snapped, "you're more powerful than ever, but precisely because of that, you need to be extra cautious. You're the keystone of the Xiangbing Company. Don't go throwing yourself into danger on a whim." Xin Zhao gave a self-assured grin. "Relax, I know my limits. It's just a triangular civilization outpost. I'd never risk my life unless I was absolutely certain I could handle it." Lianfeng's frown deepened. "You're not exactly known for holding back." "Maybe not," Xin Zhao admitted, "but if there's anyone here who can infiltrate a triangle site and walk away unscathed, it's me." After a long pause, Lianfeng exhaled. "Fine. If they prove hostile, you have my blessing to engage. I'll take full responsibility for whatever happens." High above the East China Sea, several transport helicopters tracked Xin Zhao's aircraft. His wife, Angel Jixin, manned the lead bird, her concern obvious over the comms. "Lianfeng, this is too dangerous. We should abort the mission and turn back now." Xin Zhao glanced over his shoulder at the trailing choppers. He frowned, uneasy at the thought of his soldiers and Angel being pulled into a firefight. He keyed his radio. "All units, maintain formation and stay alert. I'll scout the perimeter first. Only close in once I give the all clear." Ethan watched in stunned silence as three dolphin-like beings, each sporting a cylindrical snout, suddenly hovered above him. They radiated an alien grace, sleek bodies glinting beneath Earth's sky. "You are the triangular civilization, correct?" Ethan called out, trying to keep his voice steady. The nearest creature bobbed once, then opened its barrel-shaped mouth. What followed was a torrent of broken English. "Earthlings, you now receive decree of the Supreme. No coexistence with Kamigawa system, only brief peace granted. You must relocate to nearby Mars. Overcoming centuries, you will assist in its development. Earth will fall under the modeled Blue Empire. No large-scale stellar weapons allowed. Safety and survival guaranteed. Resistance futile. Submission ensures victory." Their words tumbled out so quickly that Ethan had to fight the urge to interrupt. When the barrage finally ceased, he tapped his earpiece and whispered, "Commander Lianfeng, did you hear all that? They're demanding we evacuate Earth for Mars and hand over our planet to the modeled Blue Empire. Do we still negotiate?" A calm voice whispered back in his ear, "Hold your ground, Ethan. Be patient." Lianfeng paused, weighing his words. "Take this opportunity to learn more about the triangular civilization. Ask them one question. Does the world of triangles have emotions?" Xin Zhao nodded and relayed the question to the alien envoys. "Do you experience emotions in your realm?" Their reply crackled back through the comlink, cold and precise. "There are many emotions, but you Earthlings cannot perceive them. You demand without conversing." Xin Zhao turned back to Lianfeng, spreading his hands in exasperation. "They're not even trying to engage, they're just making demands. Hardly a sign of peace." Lianfeng's voice grew firm. "Then we'll make our own terms clear. Their forces must withdraw from Earth, cease all interference among themselves, abandon any plans of invasion, and commit to shared progress and prosperity. Xin Zhao transmitted the ultimatum exactly as ordered. No acceptance. Negotiations terminated. Galaxy Earth, no acceptance. Immigration, war continues. The triangular delegates responded instantly. An invisible burst of electromagnetic energy shot toward them. The helicopters trailing Xin Zhao's craft spluttered as their engines conked out, and they began to plummet. Inside, the soldiers clutched their heads, ears ringing in agony as the pulse washed over them. "You're courting death." Ethan moved instantly. Uploading Kesha's archive data. Analyzing target. It's a triangular, carbon-based life form. Atomic structure inconclusive. It uses bioenergy to power microwave emissions and is now activating anti-bio-energy defenses, 20%, 40, 60, 100%. Engaging proximity disruptor, paralysis protocol initiated. The three triangular creatures stilled in midair. A low hum pulsed around them. Recalibrating gravity field, Ethan announced. Below, the helicopters that had been plummeting suddenly halted their fall and hovered as if caught in a magnetic web. Angel Jixin let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Moments ago, she'd come within inches of being crushed by the triangle's strange force. But Ethan, no longer the green recruit she once knew, had adapted and grown in leaps and bounds. His mastery of stellar power far outpaced Yishaolun's, and he'd already unlocked the ultimate dark barrier. "Ethan, do you copy? What's your status?" Lieutenant Lianfeng's voice crackled over the comm. Static surged in the feed, an unwanted gift from the triangle creature's electromagnetic interference. Lianfeng caught only fragments of noise and garbled syllables. Ethan jabbed at the comm panel. "It's dead, Yuqin. Get me Xiangbing Company on the line." He tapped the console again, but only silence answered. Frustration flared in his chest. "Switch channels, Yuqin. We need to alert everyone in Xiangbing Company to rendezvous with Zhao Xin." Before Yuqin could comply, a crackle cut through the void, and Zhao Xin's voice burst through the static. "Ethan, I can hear you!" Relief flooded Ethan. "Xin Zhao, thank God you're all right. What happened out there?" "There was an ambush by the triangle," Xin Zhao replied. "They harness bioenergy to generate powerful microwaves. Their last pulse must have overloaded our radios and wiped out our comms." Ethan's heart pounded. "And the triangle themselves? Did you engage? Any survivors?" "I engaged, all right," Xin Zhao said with a sardonic edge. "I not only fought them off, I managed to take a few alive. Though, to be honest, they're completely uncommunicative. No hope of extracting intel. My exact thought, we should just finish them off." "Wait!" Ethan's voice cut in, sharp with urgency. "Don't kill them yet. Hold your fire until we regroup." He let the words hang in the air, determined to keep every asset, enemy or not, in play until the situation was fully understood. "These triangular creatures are entirely new to us. Capturing one alive is a tremendous boon. Even if we can't yet communicate with them, we can still study their biology and perhaps discover how to neutralize the threat they pose." "Take all the time you need," Ethan said, stepping back. Zhao Xin's wife, standing at his side, echoed the sentiment with a nod. Zhao Xin swept his arm toward the three immobilized aliens. "Their abilities are still shrouded in mystery," he warned. "I've suppressed their mobility with a specialized inhibitor, but they're fighting back with residual bioenergy. If you want to run tests, you'd better hurry. Keeping them under control is draining." Ethan's eyes flicked to the strange device on Zhao Xin's belt. He wasn't entirely surprised to learn it was a void controller, an elite piece of void technology co-developed by Angel Jixin and Zhao Xin himself. In the known universe, it ranked among the most advanced void artifacts, so rare and sophisticated that even the death god Karl didn't possess one. Ethan pushed himself so hard that Jie Xiaolun found himself trailing several blocks behind. With Angel Jixin's telepathic support, one so sharp and unbreakable that it felt like a blade honed by their marriage, Ethan moved with uncanny precision. When the void controller finally arrived on the scene, it proved to be an indispensable ally. The only real disappointment was that the three of them had come together too late. By the time they showed up, the new version had already gone obsolete. Chapter 285, The Decision of the God of Death. Karl, somewhere in the vastness of space, the angelic vessel, an interstellar ship shaped like an ancient sailing galleon, glided along at sublight speed, bound for the Milky Way. Long voyages were always dull, and Ethan had succumbed to a light doze in the captain's chair. Without warning, a violent tremor rocked the ship. "What on earth?" Ethan bolted upright, heart pounding. "Where are we right now?" he muttered, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Wielding stepped up to the navigation console and peered at the star charts. "We're just outside Proxima Centauri," she said, "and we've just taken fire. Judging by the attack signature, it looks like the Triangular Civilization." Ethan frowned. The Triangular Civilization? They were wiped out in the War of Flesh tens of thousands of years ago. Why are they back now, and why are they hitting us? Wielding's lips curved into a dry smile. "Jiff, it's hardly surprising. After the fall of Holy Kesha, every kind of monster and ghost has crawled out of the woodwork." Ethan shot her a pointed look. He'd have expected her to be more sympathetic. After all, their own crew lay outside the old peace treaties, but Wielding treated the galaxy as if only she and Ethan were behind the forces of order. In her mind, they were destined to reestablish the angelic throne and bring the cosmos back to its former harmony. Anyone else who stirred up trouble? Clearly just another monster to be crushed. As alarms blared and the crew scrambled to man their battle stations, Ethan took a steadying breath. Whatever the Triangular Civilization had in store, he and Wielding would face it together, and they would not fail. "If the Triangle Civilization makes itself known, why would it choose to attack us?" Ethan asked, brow furrowed in genuine puzzlement. Wielding leaned back, considering. "I've heard their abilities are unusual. They excel at suppressing thoughts, an ability that could prove devastating against He-She. Why not propose an alliance?" "An alliance?" Ethan raised an eyebrow. "But do we even speak their language?" "That hardly matters," Wielding replied with a shrug. "Words can be the most powerful weapons of all." Ethan's eyes gleamed. "Exactly. With the right negotiation, we can win anything without firing a single shot." A slow smile spread across Wielding's face. "If we truly bring the Triangle Civilization onto our side, we'll have the confidence and the numbers to challenge the Milky Way itself." Without another word, Ethan strode off toward the Triangle Civilization's rendezvous point. To Wielding's surprise, he returned almost immediately, flanked by several triangular emissaries. "How did you manage that so quickly?" Wielding asked, astonishment in her voice. "They're open to discussion," Ethan said casually, a triumphant grin tugging at his lips. He reached out and pressed a hand gently against one of the triangular figures. It slipped beneath his palm, as if recognizing his intent. Wielding watched, amazed. If this was the beginning of an alliance, they might just have tipped the balance of power. "Have you succeeded in rewriting their thought patterns?" Wielding asked, studying the triangular creatures now hovering in formation. Hoye nodded, a triumphant spark in his eyes. "Yes, they now see me as their master, and themselves as nothing more than my pets." Ascending into the void, Hoye had set aside any notion of diplomacy. Instead, he activated his black hole engine and overwhelmed the triangle's minds. One by one, the once proud beings bowed in obedient silence. Wielding inspected them with a critical eye. On the surface, they look harmless, but to reprogram an entire species' intelligence, now that was no small achievement. A satisfied smile curved Hoye's lips. Their native intellect was surprisingly advanced. Still, with their loyalties rewritten, we've added a formidable fighting force to our ranks. Wielding's expression sobered. With this legion at our command, our assault on the Milky Way stands on firmer ground. Boo, we mustn't push He-She too far. If she feels threatened, she could break her alliance and lead the angels to heaven's banner instead. Ethan stepped forward, addressing Liang Bing. "And remember, Liang Bing, the true void can conquer every known civilization. These triangles were my first and most successful proof of concept." Liang Bing inclined her head, eyes gleaming with determination. She would follow Ethan's plan, to ensnare the death god Karl in a web of deception. Tonight, their gambit would begin. Huayi's legions are about to clash with the angelic host. If you want to join the fray, you'll have to move fast. I'll use the grand clock to teleport you right into the heart of the battle. And while I'm at it, I'll look into repairing your demon one. Liang Bing paused, brows knitting. "I need a moment to think." Karl, the god of death, blinked in surprise. "Think? What could there be left to consider? Don't you trust my power? Wasn't it I who used the grand clock to send your entire demon wing to Earth?" I know what you can do, Liang Bing said with a crooked grin. But it's your character I'm questioning, you old scoundrel. What if you teleport me smack into the angel's line of fire? I'd be dust before I knew what hit me. Liang Bing, Carl sighed, forcing a wry smile. After 10,000 years of friendship, have I ever done you wrong? I even risked everything to help you take down the holy Kesha. Liang Bing snorted. Right, you risked everything by hiding in the shadows while I did all the charging. You old bastard, you only showed up to snag the glory. Carl's smile faltered for a moment, then he squared his shoulders. I may have been in the wings, but every step I took was for you. Now, are you coming, or do I have to lock in your teleport coordinates myself? Liang Bing shot him a half-laugh. Fine. But if I end up face-to-face with a squadron of angels because of you, I'll haunt you for the next 10,000 years. Carl bowed mock solemnly. I'll mark the calendar. Then, with a flourish, he turned back to the Grand Clock's swirling portal, ready to fling them both into the chaos of war. Ethan's heart pounded. If I hadn't gotten lucky, Holy Kesha would have killed me on the spot. And isn't slaying Holy Kesha exactly what you've been aiming for? We need to plan this thoroughly. Carl, the god of death, shook his head. You've misunderstood me more deeply than you realize. But I can hardly blame you. You just suffered a devastating defeat on Earth. You're bound to feel discouraged, yet time is slipping away, and I simply can't afford to wait any longer. Liang Bing's voice turned cold. So what are you saying? You're giving up? A flash of disappointment crossed her features. She knew Carl was cautious by nature, but if he refused to adapt, how could she succeed in her mission or outwit the god of death himself? Give up? Not a chance. Carl's gaze hardened. There's a saying among mortals, if the mountain won't come to Muhammad, Muhammad must go to the mountain. Since you won't accept the clock tower's teleportation, I'll just have to expend more effort to bring Bai Mingxing straight to you. Liang Bing recoiled. What do you mean? Bai Mingxing was the cradle of Tao-Ti civilization, the lush, vibrant homeworld of the Tao-Ti people. Though their grotesque forms inspired derision among other races, few could deny the planet's beauty. Towering emerald forests stretched to the horizon, and crystal seas teemed with exotic life. Its balmy climate and fertile soil made Bai Mingxing seem an oasis in the void. Even so, the god of death, Carl, had set his sights on this world. He alone possessed the power to wrench a planet from its place in the cosmos and fling it across countless galaxies, depositing it at the threshold of Devil One, an ominous locale whispered about in the dark corners of the universe. The audacity of such a plan was staggering, but then, Carl had always reveled in the impossible. On Bai Mingxing itself, the Tao-Ti were too busy feasting and revelry ever to wonder if their sun might one day fail them. Their star, White Pluto, had already begun the slow, inevitable drift from a stable main-sequence furnace into the swollen, crimson glow of its red giant twilight. From their vantage point on the planet's verdant continents, its light looked much the same as it always had, warm, comforting, eternal. Of course, in stellar terms, eternal simply meant lasting a few 100 million more years. By then, if any Tao-Ti remained to remember their legacy, their civilization would have reached heights Carl could scarcely imagine, or it would have fallen into ruin long before the final dying breath of White Pluto. Either way, few on Bai Mingxing paused to consider the fate of a star. They had gluttony to indulge and pleasures to pursue, unaware that their world might soon be torn from its orbit and cast into a darkness far more cruel than any dying sun. It looks like the chapter text didn't come through. Could you please paste the full passage you'd like me to revise? Once I have the complete text, I'll turn it into a polished, idiomatic English version with Ethan as the male protagonist. Chapter 286, The Demonic Army Resurrects. The one calamity they never imagined has come to pass. In an instant, the blazing sun that hung overhead blinked out of existence. The Tao-Ti people fell silent in shock, until someone dared to look beyond the void and realized it wasn't their star that had vanished, but their entire world. Their planet had been wrenched from the Styx galaxy and cast into unfamiliar reaches of space. Above them stretched an alien sky, studded with stars they had never seen before. The nearest suns lay dozens of light-years away. A cold dread swept through the assembled Tao-Ti. The universe might contain infinite worlds, but only a precious few can cradle life and civilization. Life demands a razor-thin margin of conditions, just the right distance from a sun, a temperate surface climate, an atmosphere balanced to protect and sustain. Stray beyond those limits, and life withers. Now, faced with an unrecognizable firmament and the terrifying truth of their vulnerability, the Taudi understood how fragile their existence truly was, and how perilously far they had been cast from home. Although the Taudi were a bestial civilization, each individual endowed with immense strength and a metabolism built to endure extremes, the sudden death of their son left them woefully unprepared. As surface temperatures plummeted into a lethal chill, even their hardy bodies faced extinction. Fortunately, the Taudi had mastered aerospace technology on a galactic scale. Interstellar migration to a new, hospitable world lay within their grasp. Yet a mass exodus of an entire species was no small feat, and this catastrophe had struck without warning. Undeterred by the overwhelming odds, the Taudi nonetheless mobilized with unparalleled speed. Every orbital platform was brought online, every starship readied, and every available berth on the evacuation fleet filled in a last-ditch effort to carry their people away from the frozen husk of their birthplace. But behind this desperate rescue lay a darker purpose. The mastermind of the operation, Ethan, saw every Taudi not as a soul to be saved, but as nothing more than genetic material to be catalogued for posterity. How could they just let the cargo drift off on its own? Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, nearly every orbital outpost around the planet was pounded by merciless artillery. Under that hellish barrage, every starship capable of interstellar flight was ripped apart, reduced to smoking heaps of twisted metal. Even the toughest Taudi warriors felt hopelessness seize them. It was clear now that this wasn't some freak cosmic event, but a calculated strike, and they didn't even know who was responsible. Then, out of the ruins of one shattered station, grotesque creatures began to crawl, far more savage and foul-looking than any gluttonous Taudi they'd ever faced. The monsters howled with fiendish glee as they surged among the scattered survivors, hacking and tearing with brutal, inhuman efficiency. "They're demons," one Taudi warrior finally gasped, eyes wide with terror. "This is the work of the Demon Queen." "What?" another shouted, disbelief and dread warring in her voice. "Are the demons not our allies, Taudi? Obviously, the Demon Queen has betrayed her pact with Karl." "Karl, my God, have you seen all this?" A sea of gluttons collapsed to their knees, voices trembling as they prayed for deliverance. They begged their gods to pierce Morgana's deceit and grant them a miracle. But hope was an illusion. The Taudi people could never have guessed that the devastation they faced was engineered by the very deities they worshipped. When the divine edict called their fleets to storm the gates of heaven and conquer the Milky Way, it was the god of death, Karl, who hurled the Taudi civilization into the abyss. All of it, a calculated move to secure an alliance with Demon Queen Morgana. "Karl is utterly ruthless," Liang Bing muttered under his breath. The Taoti were his loyal vassal race. They obeyed his commands, conquered galaxy after galaxy in his name, and said everything for him. And yet he repaid their devotion by wiping them out. He betrayed the very people who worshipped him. One day, he'll answer for this. He'd better watch himself, or he'll end up like the Taoti man. Liang Bing's warning rang out sharp, though it was nothing more than empty bluster. She'd just accused Karl of being cruel, but in truth, she was far more ruthless. Karl had only sent Bai Mingxing ahead to confront her. It was Liang Bing herself who had driven the Taoti people to the brink of annihilation. When Liang Bing first descended to Earth, she'd roamed the globe with genuine curiosity, even striving to respect human laws and customs. In time, however, the restraints chafed her pride. She snapped, unleashing a murderous rage that left countless innocents dead. Yet compared to the fate she'd now imposed on the Taudi, that early frenzy seemed almost merciful. Of course, it wasn't merely a clash of Kamigawa lineage against bestial heritage. In the Super Seminary universe, appearances dictated morality. Taoti equaled evil incarnate. Even Angel Jixin, a 500-year-old luminary of the Beauty Association, had once quipped that Karl, the god of death, was far too strikingly handsome to be truly wicked. To her, exquisite beauty precluded malevolence. Ethan watched, stunned. He'd never encountered an angel from the Beauty Association before, and certainly never one whose warped logic could justify such brutality. White Pluto has become nothing short of a living hell. Ever since its sun vanished, surface temperatures have plummeted to levels the Tauti can barely endure. Gluttonians collapse in the streets, their bodies frozen solid in the bone-chilling cold. And yet this is only the beginning. From the mounds of Tauti corpses, demons emerge, one after another, ripping apart whoever crosses their path. Under Ethan's command, their ranks now exceed 1,000,000 strong, a force nearly equal to that of the angels. Such numbers explain how he dares stand against the angelic host. After all, if Ethan had simply fled and hidden, Captain Allen of the Holy Left Wing would never have fallen in battle when Holy Kesha was absent. Allen's death and the cataclysmic clash that sank all of Fraser proved beyond doubt that demonkind still wields formidable power. Back on Earth, Ethan hesitated. He was bound by too many fears and restraints, so only a fraction of the demon army could be resurrected. Here on White Pluto, however, he has cast off those doubts. The full might of demon civilization is now at his fingertips, and the heavens themselves may soon tremble. Thanks to Karl, the god of death, providing unrestricted genetic materials, and even gifting her an entire Tauti star as a vessel for demon resurrection, Queen Liangbing could finally field an endless army. "I beg your forgiveness, your majesty." The newly reformed demon generals knelt before her, their faces burning with shame. "We betrayed your trust." Queen Liangbing raised a hand, her voice calm and gentle. "It's not your fault," she said. "I was too careless." Chapter 287, The Dread of Pepixi. "But this time," Liangbing declared, her voice ringing with iron resolve, "with death god Karl's power to back me, I will recall every last demon under my command. If I fail again, there will be no excuses." A hush fell over the assembled fiends. Then, in one thunderous chorus, they answered, "Yes, my queen!" "Fight to the death for our queen," they vowed, their eyes blazing with fanatic devotion. On the far edge of the Milky Way, beneath an expanse of glittering stars, colossal blades of living flames sliced through the void. After a grueling voyage, Grandfather Huaye's armada had finally reached the galaxy's outskirts and run headlong into the angel civilization's forward fleet. It was only then that Huaye realized they hadn't truly breached Milky Way space. Without hesitation, he transmitted an urgent request to the Tiandao civilization, and permission was granted. The invasion could proceed. Under Huaye's command lay a formidable assemblage, the battlecruisers of the Tauti civilization, the dreadnoughts of the Triangle civilization, and swarms of warships from the feared Tianza. Such overwhelming strength, they believed, would guarantee victory. But nothing could have prepared them for the angel civilization's champions. Arrayed against them were warriors wielding the legendary Heavenly Blade and Heavenly Base martial arrays, combat deities whose power eclipsed standard celestial armaments. No shield could withstand their assaults, no cannon pierced their defenses. In moments, Huaye's luxurious fleet was rent asunder. Ships erupted in blazing infernos, tactics unraveled, and countless souls were lost in a tide of divine-sponsored slaughter. As the remnants of the armada fled in disarray, the true might of the angel civilization's defenders, and the peril facing any who dared challenge the Milky Way, became chillingly clear. The shadow of Pepixi, monstrous and unrelenting, had fallen across the stars, and only the most desperate gambit could hope to turn the tide. Ethan watched in awe as the combat starship unleashed its signature weapon, the flaming giant sword. Fueled by raw stellar energy, this star-driven technology allowed it to strike targets at extreme ranges with devastating precision. Unlike most angelic vessels, designed around the civilization's legendary personal combat prowess, this ship wielded a form of firepower so overwhelming it left even the mightiest battleships helpless. They called it the world-shattering blade. No matter the enemy's class or defenses, the flaming giant sword sliced through hulls like soft tofu. In an instant, a single blow would shear a warship in half and send the wreckage spiraling into a blazing fireball. Such destructive force, however, came at a terrible cost. Each discharge ravaged the host star itself. Ethan recalled how, in the original campaign, he had commanded the Tianren No. 7 and used this weapon to annihilate an entire Tauti main fleet in mere seconds. But after only a handful of strikes, the system began to falter. The Chiwu star's stability plummeted, its remaining lifespan gravely shortened. It was the spaceborne equivalent of using an anti-aircraft cannon to swat mosquitoes, utterly overpowered but wildly wasteful. Still, there was no denying the Tianren No. 7's sheer firepower. In a universe where personal skill reigned supreme, this starship's new trick was a reminder that raw, overwhelming might could still write its own legends. Even the Tau T flagship, with its photon barrier strong enough to shrug off a nuclear blast, fell in moments. But the cost was astronomical. In order to annihilate those warships, the Tianren No. 7 cruiser tapped directly into its home star, Chiwu, siphoning off an amount of energy so vast it risked destabilizing the sun itself. Chiwu already pours out unfathomable power every second. Bleeding it dry like that would drastically shorten its lifespan. Such waste was simply unacceptable. The root of the problem lay in the lineage of the Skyblade series. Ships like the Tianren No. 7 were designed and built under the old Holy Kesha regime, a regime that, despite its many achievements, never mastered efficient stellar drive technology. Had these vessels been developed as true spaceborne prototypes, their performance and economy would have been far superior. Back on Leong Star, the brilliant engineer Chuxi had once cracked the secrets of the star drive, but after Holy Kesha's collapse, he vanished without a trace. Only now, with a new Angel King to be crowned, has he been summoned once more, his mission, to put Yan, the heir apparent to the celestial throne, through his final, decisive trial. At that critical moment, she unleashed the flare furnace technique to pull Angel Yan back from the brink of death, and in the process, forced him to ascend to a fourth-generation divine body. The flare furnace is a star-powered technology drawn from the sun star itself, and just before the decisive showdown with Huaye's forces, she secretly applied its principles to upgrade every Skyblade series combat celestial vessel. Dozens of these warships flared to life, each one vastly more efficient at drawing stellar energy. Although the star beneath them suffered some strain, the damage remained within safe limits. Under that relentless barrage, Huaye's army was virtually powerless. In truth, if not for the god's long-standing restraint, a single Skyblade vessel, unleashed at full power, could have obliterated every Taudi warship in the fleet without leaving so much as a scrap of metal behind. No wonder the angelic civilization still stands at the pinnacle of the cosmos. For tens of thousands of years, its order of justice has ruled the known universe with unchallenged authority. It wasn't the angelic warriors' grace or silver tongue that made them unbeatable. It was the raw power they wielded, the kind that had crushed countless civilizations across the stars. Ruoning's jaw tightened as he stared at the flickering control panel. Beside him, Huaye's expression was equally grim. She hovered at their side, her eyes coldly curious. "You still not feeling well, Ruoning?" she asked, her voice deceptively light. Ruoning snapped his head around. "Don't patronize me," he growled. "You know exactly how dangerous she is. The Heavenly Blade vessel may be manageable, but the Sky Sovereign, you've completely overhauled its operating system and combat engines. I don't even know how to interface with it." Huaye nodded in agreement. Just hours ago, both of them had been brimming with confidence. With two fourth-generation divine forms and the Void Engine at their disposal, hijacking a combat vessel should have been a simple matter of brute force. Instead, they'd badly underestimated Heishi's talents. In record time, she'd ripped out and rebuilt every tactical subroutine, fortifying the Sky Sovereign into an impenetrable fortress. Ruoning's carefully laid plan, to deploy the Heavenly Blade against the Sky Sovereign and then seize control from within, now lay in ruins before it had even begun. "Abandon your battleships and fall back." Ruoning's voice rang out across the hollow bridge. "These Tianji-class war sentinels have no answer for gods or super soldiers. Don't hold back. There's no risk of hitting them." Somali dashed off to relay the order. Instantly, their forces abandoned the massive vessels, scattering into guerrilla formations. Ethan watched it all, puzzled. These war sentinels boasted weapons powerful enough to vaporize even third-generation divine bodies or invincible-class soldiers, if they ever managed a direct hit. The real problem was, they never did. It felt as though the scriptwriter had ripped up the plan and thrown it in the shredder. Maybe no one ever imagined a god or super soldier could break through the Angel's interception grids. Atop the command dice sat Heishi, regal in her Tianji series throne, every inch the confident, domineering commander. Ethan had to admit, this version of He Shi was far more interesting than the one he'd read about. Still, the occasional tremor in her perfectly poised legs betrayed a tension she otherwise kept under tight control. Ethan's patience had run out. He'd promised He Shi an audience with the God King, but the throne room remained silent. No summons came, yet the enemy renewed their assault. Hua Ye's legions were back at the gates. He Shi had no choice but to stand her ground. This was a fight she could not afford to lose. Should her defenses fall, every angel under her command would be irrevocably drawn into the heavenly Tao. She unleashed her two greatest computational arsenals, the Tianren and Tianji combat matrices, pouring so much power into them that even Hua Ye and his lieutenant Ruoning were left baffled by the sudden surge. For now, she held the advantage, but her thoughts kept drifting to a more dangerous threat, the death god Karl. If he managed to disable the Grand Clock, the last bastion of her strategy, He Shi would only be able to stave off defeat for a few fleeting moments. At that moment, Ethan's calm crystal chimed. "Your Majesty," his aide reported, "the scouts have discovered a new planet on the outer edge of the Milky Way, White Pluto." Ethan leaned back in his throne, meeting the messenger's anxious gaze. "Inform the fleet," he instructed evenly, "but tell them there's no cause for alarm." He rose, calm and unshaken. Whatever White Pluto held, he would face it in due time. For now, the war raged at the gates, and He Shi needed every second she could buy. Chapter 288. Liang Bing turns her back. Hua Ye and Ruoning finally succeeded in boarding and wresting control of a Skyblade-class combat vessel, but not without suffering heavy losses. In an instant, the balance of power shifted. The captured ship became a makeshift stronghold for the Sky Scum, shielding them from enemy fire, even as they launched counterattacks. "Damn it!" Queen He Shi hissed, her composure cracking. She hadn't anticipated that Hua Ye and Ruoning could pull off such a bold maneuver. "Abandon every remaining Skyblade vessel," she ordered, her voice iron-cold. "Render their combat engines inoperable. Leave nothing that they can use." "Your Majesty, those are our finest warships," the ancient angel at her side began, hesitation heavy in his tone. "If the Holy Queen Kesha were alive," He Shi snapped, "she'd issue this same command without a second thought. Stop stalling. Carry it out immediately, or our situation will only worsen." The old angel swallowed hard, bowed, and fell silent. He knew better than to press her further. As He Shi's forces prepared to scuttle their own prized ships, rather than let them fall into enemy hands, Hua Ye and Ruoning redoubled their efforts. Their plan was simple but ruthless. Replicate this daring takeover with every Skyblade vessel they could reach, and turn the tide of battle decisively in their favor. "We've succeeded in capturing a Skyblade combat vessel," Ruoning announced, her eyes shining with excitement. "Now's the time to press our advantage. Let's split our forces and strike from multiple angles. We'll overwhelm Ethan." She paused, gauging Hua Ye's reaction. "Ethan will be tied up commanding defenses, coordinating the data streams of every angel squad. Once we—" Before she could finish, alarms blared across the control bridge. The Skyblade fleet, numbers 1 through 7, was peeling away as ordered. But these weren't the only vessels in the series. Each designation had dozens of identical models in reserve. In an instant, the corridor outside ruptured in a blinding flash. "Get back!" Hua Ye shouted as one of the Skyblade ships ruptured and exploded against the hull. Fiery debris rained down, setting off cascading alarms. Ruoning's spirit recoiled. Impossible. Ethan actually triggered the vessel's self-destruct. She stared at the holoscreen in horror. She hadn't expected Ethan to take such a ruthless step, but in this moment, it was the only move that made sense. In the aftermath of the blast, the bridge fell into stunned silence. The Skyblade fleet, now drastically reduced, still held dangerous numbers. Yet with the flagship gone, their momentum stalled. Ruoning realized that Ethan's brutal gambit had bought precious time and space for the defending angels to regroup. Breathing heavily, she steadied herself. The battle for the heavens was far from over, but Ethan's sacrifice had just shifted the tides. Ethan studied the data streaming across the display and spoke at last. "He Shi is right. If we don't move now, Ruoning and Hua Ye will overrun us. Besides, the battle engine algorithm in the Tianji series is completely different from the Tianren vessels. Even if Ruoning mounts an assault, she'll need far more time to crack our defenses than she would against the Tianren series. Time we may no longer have once the war's outcome is decided. She exchanged a determined nod but didn't reply. The risk was clear to everyone in the room. Huaye recoiled in shock at her cold decisiveness. There's no way you can leave me without a single ship, he gasped, pounding the console in frustration. Each time he integrated a new combat celestial body, his computing power soared, intoxicating him with strength. He had convinced himself that, were he master of every vessel, even God King Ethan would think twice before challenging him. Ruoning's gaze was steely. Then what do you propose? We can't stop the combat bodies from self-destructing. Our only hope now is to rely on Karl's grandson. Huaye's posture sagged. He turned to look at Heishi, both of them silent. Lai acknowledging the harsh truth. In desperate times, you cling to whatever ally you can find. Ethan watched in horror as the Skyblade combat constructs began to self-destruct. Each explosion rent his heart, and he felt as though his very blood was burning. Before he could gather his thoughts, a familiar face appeared in his vision, the death god Karl. I've assessed the situation, King Huaye, and you too, Ethan. You'll both receive additional computing power from the big clock, Karl announced. Ethan's pulse quickened. The big clock was the most advanced celestial supercomputer in the known universe, far beyond even the archive of sacred knowledge. And this particular instance of the big clock still hadn't attained full operational authority. No one could say just how formidable it truly was. Karl's reasoning was as simple as it was ruthless. He couldn't allow one side to vastly outpower the other. When the Void Age finally arrived, the hordes beyond reality would strike at the most dominant deities first. Karl wanted the war across the known universe to drag on, drawing all top gods into conflict so that none stood out as an obvious target. That meant King Huaye and Ethan had to be reinforced. Ethan turned to Huaye. Support from the big clock? How much are we talking about? Karl's reply crackled through the comlink, tinged with a somber resolve. Enough to tip the balance, but not so much that you become the next mark of the void. Prepare yourselves. As Karl's image faded, Ethan took a steadying breath. Whatever power the big clock would lend them, he knew it was a lifeline, for their side and for his own survival in the coming Void Age. Karl, the god of death, spoke calmly. 13% is the absolute maximum. Ruoning bristled. 20%, she shot back. You know how much processing power the great clock needs, and it has to be precise to 3 decimal places. Karl shrugged. Fine, 15% then. Before Ruoning could argue, Huaye interjected, That's acceptable. Karl nodded in agreement. Ruoning glared at Huaye. If he hadn't stepped in, she might have won more computing support. Huaye offered her an apologetic smile but said nothing. He knew Karl wouldn't bend twice. Prepare for the link, Miss Ruoning, Karl instructed. Ruoning connected her interface to the great clock's core. Almost instantly, she felt the additional processing power surge into the clock, its systems humming with renewed energy. At the same moment, Karl turned to Liang Bing. Liang Bing, it's time. Liang Bing, arms still outstretched as she summoned the Taoti demon, froze in mid-formation. What is it? Join the battle, Karl said firmly. I've allocated 30% of the clock's computing power to you. There was no room for debate. Liang Bing nodded, her eyes flashing with resolve, and finalized the demon's form before racing off to the front lines. Oh, about that. I'm sorry, Karl. I quit. With those words, Liang Bing ended the call. Death God Karl stared at his silent communicator in disbelief. What was that supposed to mean? True, Liang Bing had double-crossed him before, but never this quickly. One moment she was using him to her advantage. The next, she'd flipped on him in the blink of an eye. He tried to call her back, but Liang Bing refused to pick up. His plan had been simple. Manipulate her into betraying the heavenly Tao civilization, then strike Heishi from within. Heishi would be powerless to stop the combined might of the heavenly dregs and the demons. On the white nether star of the Taoti civilization lurked untold hordes of Taoti. If even a tenth were converted into demons, Morgana's legions would number in the millions. They'd steamroll the angel civilization, especially with Huaye's forces at their side. Everything was falling perfectly into place, until Liang Bing reneged. But Karl knew she hadn't turned traitor on a whim. She still coveted the Galaxy Power Void Engine, the ultimate prize. By baiting the Death God to come after her, she aimed to snatch that engine right from under his nose. Now Carl realized the danger. Liang Bing wasn't his pawn anymore. She was the one setting the trap. Your Majesty, do you really believe Death God Carl can be fooled? Ge Xiaolun peered up at the Queen, genuine concern in her eyes. The Queen's expression grew grave. I'm not certain, but Huaye means everything to Carl, and she is no fool. The moment events take a turn for the worse, she'll summon God King Ethan without hesitation. Huaye won't survive that confrontation, and when he falls, Carl will inevitably come rushing in. Chapter 289, She steps into the Heavenly Tao. The briefing room fell silent as Liang Bing surveyed the data array, then looked up at Ge Xiaolun. Carl still lusts after Huaye's Tianzhe evenly. He won't allow them to be ground down. If Huaye himself dies, no problem. Resurrection protocols will bring him back. But if the entire Tianzhe force is wiped out, that's a risk Carl can't afford. Ge Xiaolun leaned forward, curiosity alight in her eyes. So you think the Death God Carl might personally enter the field this time? Liang Bing lifted a glass of deep red wine and swirled it before taking a calm sip. Who can say? Carl's motives are inscrutable. He could march in at any moment, or he might wait until the last possible second. Since Holy Kaisha's retirement, only two supreme deities remained active in the known universe, God King Ethan and the Death God Carl. Rumors of Ethan's power persisted, but the Queen had strictly forbidden any direct contact with him. Carl, by contrast, was better understood, feared for his domineering will and ruthless efficiency. Would he truly intervene, or simply observe? Liang Bing set her glass on the console. All we can do is trust our preparations. If our plan holds, we'll force Carl's hand, or render his interference moot. Beyond the transparent walls of the war room, the colossal clockwork engine unleashed torrents of computational power. Huaye and Ruoning had exploited that energy to hack into the self-destruct sequences of the enemy's Tianren warcraft, seizing control of each vessel mere moments before it blew apart. Now, liberated and reinforced, the Tianzhe legions surged forward to meet the angelic host in a maelstrom of cosmic fire and steel. And thus the heavens trembled as the Tianzhe and the angels clashed in a battle that would echo across the universe. Ethan pressed his hand against the control console as the battle raged on all sides. The space-time barrier technology that gave the angels' celestial fighters their edge was suddenly working against them whenever they faced identical enemy units. King Hexi's jaw clenched. Their advantage was gone. Huaye had managed to salvage only 5 enemy combat celestial bodies, and then, in a desperate gamble, he'd rigged each one with his experimental black hole engine. The engine siphoned off every scrap of stellar energy in the vicinity and unleashed a flurry of attacks that annihilated all the Angels' space-based units. Your Majesty, what do we do now? An officer shouted over the alarms. The Angels did not fear death, but now there was no hope of victory. Around Tianzhe, dozens of triangular war constructs hovered in formation. Their psychic assault was perfectly tuned to the Angels' neural patterns. No wonder even King He, the realm's foremost scientific genius, could not devise a countermeasure on the fly. Though the Angels still outnumbered Tianzhe's forces in sheer ship count, their casualties climbed faster than their foes. And Tianzhe's legions were endless. Ethan watched the tactical readouts, bracing himself for the next wave, because he knew the tide of this engagement was about to turn, and soon. The Taotian giant wolf civilizations, still oblivious to the disappearance of their homeworlds, have been joined by the predatory sky scum and the newly allied Triangle civilization. Rumors of the catastrophe have also drawn in space mercenaries and even aerospace-level empires. With so many forces arrayed against him, Huaye couldn't be bothered with how many lives were lost. At this rate, defeat was all but certain. She stared at the silent Milky Way on her star chart and sighed. She knew she had no choice but to take drastic action. Summoning every ounce of will, she activated the Dark Plane communicator again and called for Ethan. As before, there was no answer. If he continued to ignore her summons, would she have to journey to the galactic core in person? Resolving that there was no time to lose, she turned to her chief guardian. I'm heading to the Heavenly Tao. Kayla, you'll less. Stay behind and command our forces. With our celestial war engines holding the line, they should be able to keep the enemy at bay until I return. Right away, Your Majesty. Angel Kayla replied without hesitation. She already understood the gravity of the situation, but could the heavenly Tao civilization truly be trusted to receive them? The angels of the previous civilization would have met us with confidence. No question, they'd have welcomed reinforcements. But after the crushing blows of the last few days and the steady stream of comrades falling in battle, that certainty has evaporated. If we arrive now, battered and desperate, won't we only become another liability to the heavenly Tao? With our numbers so depleted, what real aid could we possibly offer? Your Highness Ethan, please come in. Panjen's voice was steady, but Ethan knew the invitation carried urgency. A direct wormhole jump to Earth was impossible. The Milky Way's transit lanes were sealed, and our sensors couldn't lock onto the destination with any precision. Our only hope lay in traveling alongside Panjen and his expeditionary team. Just then, Ruo Ning's voice crackled over the comlink, tense and incredulous. Your Highness, I've just received word from a low-level informant. He reports seeing a silver-haired angel in full silver armor en route to the Milky Way sector where the heavenly Tao civilization is stationed. Ethan's heart sank. The two sides were already on a hair trigger. Heavenly Tao's combat sentinels had shadowed our movements for days. Huaye had been at pains to avoid any provocation. One misstep now, and we'd be torn apart before we even had a chance to explain ourselves. Ruo Ning's voice broke the silence. If this angel is who we think she is, we could be walking into an execution. Ethan closed his eyes, steeling himself. Whatever lay ahead, there would be no turning back. She has slipped through to the Tiandao galaxy. How she managed it, nobody knows. Wasn't the battlefield completely sealed off? Huaye's voice trembled with disbelief. Your Majesty, did you really let her through? I thought we'd locked down every exit. Tianja ran a hand over his face in frustration. All right, she's in. Do you honestly think your blockade can hold her now? And look at the mess we've got, Carl. Ruoning didn't hesitate. He keyed into Death Carl's dark comms channel, but Carl was already furiously trying to reach Liang Bing over the old network, only to find Liang Bing had shifted to a new encryption. Until Carl cracked that code, any contact was impossible. Worse, knowing that she had penetrated the Tiandao Milky Way sector, Carl realized the civilization must be preparing to intervene, otherwise they'd never allow her passage. She herself understood this, which was why the moment she crossed the threshold, she finally let herself relax. Leaning against the smooth crystalline wall, she met their gazes coolly. Judging by your confidence, you're convinced the king will help me, aren't you? At those words, Ethan reappeared at her side, expression calm and certain. He offered her a reassuring smile. I wouldn't have let you in if I didn't intend to, he said softly. I am ready to lead the angel civilization under your banner, Your Majesty, she said without hesitation. Ethan met her gaze coolly. He made no mention of their old friendship. Among gods, only power and principle held weight. She knew this well. With the backing of Carl, the death god, Ethan had left her no real choice. If any other option had existed, she would never have surrendered. She was one of the most stubborn angels in all the realms, second only to Holy Kesha, and fortunately, Ethan had no designs on Kesha. Very well, Ethan replied calmly. You know what happened to Liang after he bowed to the celestial way. I know, she answered, stepping forward. She climbed onto Ethan's lap in a single graceful motion, a gesture both deferential and strangely intimate. My king, shall I deploy our legions? Ethan's lips curved in a faint smile. Not yet. What of the oath? She inclined her head. We angels will no longer be bound by that oath. From now on, the heavenly way itself will hold us to our word. Ethan nodded, satisfied. Then it is settled. His emerald eyes narrowed as she stepped closer. I still want your vow of protection, she insisted, her voice steady. But Ethan stood his ground, refusing to relent. Far from regretting her demand, he felt a strange exhilaration surge through her. Seeing Ethan again, she found herself utterly captivated by his godlike presence, unable to resist the pull of his divine charm. Chapter 290. Angels are no longer assigned. She stood before Ethan with firm resolve. I, King of Tianji, swear to be your guardian angel and share in everything you cherish. Ethan watched him closely. When she finished, Ethan nodded. Then, may we go rescue the angels now, Your Majesty? Yes. She's voice was steady. Without another word, Ethan turned to General Panjen. Lead the army. We march at once to save the angel civilization. Panjen's face tightened. Deep down, he had expected this order, but now that it was given, it still struck him hard. He'd long harbored a personal desire to free the angels himself. Yet a bitter feud stood between the Liang civilization and the angel civilization. The exile of the Holy Kesha had been orchestrated by Liang, even if Panjen had insisted at the time that Reina acted under demonic influence. Everyone with any insight had seen through the pretense. Now, if the angel civilization joined the Tiandao alliance, relations with Liang would become unbearably tense. Panjen's loyalty to the realm clashed with the unhealed wounds of the past, and yet, despite his misgivings, he could not refuse. He bowed once. As you command, Your Majesty. Then he turned to marshal the troops, his mind heavy with the burden of what was to come. Panjen would have to be a fool to think the two deputy generals and their adjutants were unconcerned. No sooner had he reached that conclusion than a booming announcement crackled through every comm channel. Attention all who bear the wings of the angel civilization. This is the heavenly Tao civilization. Prepare yourselves. Operation Rescue is now underway. Angels across the waiting halls, who had been hanging on Heishi's every word, finally allowed themselves to breathe. A response had come, but at a price. By accepting this intervention, they would effectively trade the banner of the angel civilization for that of the far mightier heavenly Tao civilization. What? Ethan is really stepping in? Huaye folded his arms, frowning at the live feed. He'd half expected some outside force to show up, but this felt like outright hijacking. This was his mission, his responsibility. Why was Ethan swooping in to take credit? Is it because he's handsome? Huaye muttered, running a hand through his hair. Does that make him more entitled? I've got looks. If they want assistance, they could have just asked. We could have refined the divine body enhancements together. It's not rocket science, so why sell out the angel civilization? He stamped a foot in frustration. Recall our forces, he ordered. I don't trust the heavenly Tao civilization's motives. We need to regroup, and fast. With that, Huaye turned away from the screen, mind racing at the implications of Ethan's unexpected involvement. We'll never stand a chance. Ruaning's voice echoed through the grand hall as she glared at Sumali. President Su, do something. Order our side to pull back before it's too late. Huaye lounged atop his ebony throne, irritation darkening his features. He waved a hand dismissively. Very well. Send the withdrawal order. Sumali bowed and hurried away, relaying the command to the ranks below. In an instant, the heavenly scum army, already reeling, began to fall back. But clustered on the perimeter, the angels and their heavenly Tao champions bristled at the sight of a retreat. They'd slaughter a drowning dog without a second thought. Damn it, Liang Bing hissed, her grip tightening on the hilt of her sword. She'd long anticipated Heishi's plight, weighing every possible outcome. Yet when the moment came, her heart churned with unease. Heishi had breached the gates of supreme heaven. Once inside, could she follow, or would Heishi hunt her through the highest realm? And then there was Angel Yan, the fallen angel king, still confined at Liang Bing's mercy. Though his title now rang hollow, his ties to the holy archives and celestial armory made him a powerful pawn. If Liang Bing played her hand wisely, Yan's lingering authority coup would prove invaluable. Despite the chaos, a single truth remained. In this battle of gods and mortals, no retreat was ever truly safe. Ethan watched Liang Bing with a half-smile. You really think Heishi won't try to pull me into her schemes? Liang Bing hesitated. I can't say for sure, but there's another path. I could vie for your favor myself. I know Angel Yan means a great deal to you. Offer her to you in exchange, and you'd surely lean my way. Even if the sacred archives and armory don't excite you, I doubt you'd refuse their power outright. He shook his head gently. You underestimate yourself, Liang Bing. He stood and strode to the panoramic windows overlooking the star-filled void. After the Tianja legions carved tens of thousands of corpses across the void, we finally broke free from Tiandao's chase. Once that threat receded, the angelic war hosts of the divine civilization poured into the Milky Way. For them, this was more than a refuge. It was a revelation. The Milky Way, once dismissed as a backwater outpost, now outstrips their own Angel Nebula in safety. Liang Bing's brow furrowed. And yet that very safety is breeding unease. No one knows what comes next, least of all the ancient angels. They still bear the scars of the old heavenly palace's fall. Many of the elders refuse to accept any male angel into their ranks. Some reject all men entirely. What if you, God King Ethan, prove too voracious? What if you seek to claim them all? Ethan turned, his gaze steady. Let them assume what they will. A king's true strength lies not in coercion, but in earning loyalty, even from the most wary. As long as we stand together, no fear or rumor will tear us apart. He extended a hand toward Liang Bing. Trust in that, and there's no scheme he or anyone else can use against us. The angels had no wish to remain anyone's playthings. They longed only for a fair chance, and if it demanded sacrifice or battle, they would not shrink from it. King of Tiandao, someone shouted as Ethan appeared. In that instant, the angels found new courage. They closed in around him, wings rustling. Ethan met their hopeful gazes and spoke, voice calm and clear. From today on, do not address me as the King of Tiandao. Angel Kira tilted her head, confused. But isn't that title already yours alone? In the Tiandao civilization, there can be only one king. Ethan lifted an eyebrow. Precisely. And so there will be only one sovereign over all the divine realms in the known universe. All other gods and pantheons stand excluded. A hush fell over the circle. They had never heard such a bold proclamation. Holy Kesha, in her private thoughts, may have harbored such ambitions, but she would never have voiced them. Yet now, hearing Ethan claim absolute rule, the angels felt an unprecedented stirring of loyalty. It wouldn't be long, they sensed, before they pledged themselves entirely to him. Finally, one of the elder angels, her silver hair gleaming, took a hesitant step forward. Your Majesty Ethan, what will become of us now? What lies ahead? Ethan offered a reassuring smile. Nothing changes in your duties or privileges. You will continue as before. Trust in me and have no fear. His Majesty the God King does not like you. She let her usual composure slip into a teasing grin, and the assembled angels stirred at her uncharacteristic candor. If Ethan had been anything like Huaye, such a remark might have spelled trouble, but his divine allure far exceeded Huaye's. Nevertheless, she wanted to safeguard the angels' autonomy, and she had devised the perfect solution. The God King grants you full freedom to choose any celestial warrior or deity as your consort, she declared, her voice carrying through the vaulted chamber. Your independence remains unchallenged. His Majesty will not interfere with your decision. A collective sigh of relief swept over the female angels. Many among them had already been matched by the sanctum of sacred knowledge with male gods or super soldiers and believed themselves happily paired. Without she's personal summons, they would never have returned, except, perhaps, to reunite with beloved partners. They had feared forced assignments to the 33 heavens of the supreme realm, never again to lay eyes on the true civilization of the heavenly Tao. In fact, it was the first time even she herself had glimpsed the wonders of those exalted realms. Chapter 291, She's Void Engine. She stared in astonishment at the humming array of void engines before her. I never imagined Tiandao's mastery of space-time technology could be this advanced, she murmured, her voice a blend of awe and disbelief. Learning that Tiandao had moved beyond prototypes and was now mass-producing void engines, the unrivaled power source of the known universe, shook her to the core. After all, she herself possessed a void engine. If Angel Leng had one, how could she be without? Angel Leng stood at her side, eyes wide. I never dreamed this day would come, she admitted. With the angel civilization gone, we expected Tiandao to prevail, but becoming sworn sisters with the legendary Tianji King, that was beyond my hopes. Across the chamber, the other angel sisters exchanged stunned looks. When Leng's signal abruptly cut out, they had feared her lost forever. Yet here she was, alive and reunited with her sisters on Tiandao, a living testament to the new order rising in the cosmos. Meanwhile, Tiandao's vast system was still reeling from the combined shockwaves of the Liyang and angel civilizations. The lifeforms Ethan had crafted within his imperial dimension were, by design, flawless. Real souls made manifest. Yet the sudden influx of angels and refugees from Liang introduced countless new variables, sending Tiandao's algorithms into overdrive. Hexie, now Ethan's guardian angel, had intentionally withdrawn from overseeing the settlement process and entrusted every detail to him. It had taken her 1,000,000 years before she could finally relinquish her own mortal bonds. When her vigil ended, Hexie collapsed into Ethan's arms. Concern laced her soft voice. "My king, Liang Bing has captured Angel Yan. And Angel Yan holds both the Vault of Heavenly Knowledge and the Arsenal of Holy Kesha. Even I lack the clearance to access those treasures. If that she-devil gets her hands on them, the consequences will be dire." In that moment, Hexie's feelings were unmistakable. She had fallen completely in love with Ethan, and her only private hope was that he would rescue Angel Yan, so the fallen angel could, in turn, restore the angel civilization to its former glory. With Angel Yan's personal repository of sacred knowledge and his hidden arsenal, plus the scattered descendants of angels throughout the Angel Nebula, it's only a matter of time before he restores an entire angel civilization. What puzzles Ethan, though, is why Angel Yan remains a solitary commander, isolated from everyone else. Ethan regarded he-she coolly. "Honestly, it's just a vault of forbidden lore. I couldn't care less about Death God Karl's great clock, let alone Angel Yan's archive." He-she's brow creased. "But what if Liang Bing turns that archive over to Death God Karl?" Ethan's expression darkened. "That's exactly what worries me. Liang Bing and Karl share the same ambitions. They're practically in league. And now that the Tiandao civilization is rising, she won't tolerate the demon realm bowing to anyone else. She'll go straight to her lover Karl for support. If Angel Yan's repository and arsenal fall into his hands, we'll be in serious trouble. I wouldn't bet a single soul on their ability to withstand the onslaught of the Great Clock." Before Ethan's arrival, there might have been a sliver of hope, but now it's gone. Liang Bing has undoubtedly found a safe haven of her own, and she'd sooner let Angel Yan and Angel King lie forgotten than betray her. She understands all too well that capturing an Angel King means seizing the destiny of the entire angel civilization. "Even if Death God Karl lays claim to the Holy Knowledge Archive," Ethan said, his tone cool and assured, "he still won't be a match for me, your king." She scowled at the name Death God Karl. "Don't underestimate him. The Big Clock is a celestial-level supercomputer built by the Shenhe civilization, undeniably the most advanced in the known universe. For centuries, no one has even come close to eclipsing it. In these parts, the Holy Knowledge Archive only approaches its level." Ethan offered a confident smile. "I'm well aware of what the Big Clock can do, but believe me when I say, our Tiandao civilization is more powerful." She's eyes lit up with genuine curiosity. "Then what does Tiandao's celestial supercomputer look like?" he asked. Ethan leaned back, expression serene. "Patience. All will be revealed soon enough." Ethan gazed out at the jagged peaks below, their snow-capped summits glinting in the pale starlight. Could the Tiandao civilization's celestial supercomputer really be that powerful? He asked quietly. She shrugged, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "You'll find out soon enough." Ethan fell silent. She didn't press him. She understood that, even as a guardian angel, some secrets were beyond her reach. Maybe she wasn't meant to know them yet, or perhaps never. After a moment, she shifted her weight and asked, "So what's our next move?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "We attack the enemy and free our allies." She frowned. "You mean we're heading into the Styx Nebula?" "That's right." Ethan's voice was firm. "The Death Song Academy is hidden in the Styx Nebula. Unless Death God Karl activates the Grand Clock to move it somewhere else, we have to strike there." Below them, the mountains stretched like a frozen ocean. Ethan admired their majesty for a heartbeat, then turned back. "And if Karl does use the Grand Clock to shift the Academy away? She won't be able to save his forces," she replied. "We'll destroy the Tianzi Legion first, then we'll track down the Tao Ti and that massive wolf. Without soldiers to command, Karl will be stranded and fully vulnerable." Ethan met her gaze, determination burning bright in his eyes. "Then that's our opening." She mulled it over and decided this was probably the best course of action, but she still needed a way to rescue Angel Yan. Over the next few days, she finally took delivery of her new Void Engine. 10-frequency Galaxy Force Void Engine, the data slate read. Standard anti-void shielding with integrated phasic structure strike module. She'd already learned from the Tiandao engineers what this engine could do, and yet one question gnawed at her. How had the Tiandao civilization solved the problem of a void engine wreaking havoc or emitting deadly radiation the moment it activated within a divine or super soldier frame? That mystery was the very reason Tiandao could mass-produce void warriors. Elsewhere, like in the Styx Nebula, every void combatant had to be a robot. She turned to Ethan. In that other universe you mentioned, you said there are spiritual beings and phantom enemies. Ethan hesitated, then replied quietly, Spirits and phantoms? You mean life forms of a different order? At that moment, she realized she had found the lead she desperately needed. Ethan leaned back, pondering Hishi's words. So even the Dark Universe has seen real physical wars, battles fought by heavenly Tao bodies, spiritual bodies, and phantom bodies alike? Hishi nodded gravely. Exactly. Ethan tapped his finger against his chin. Then, is it possible Carl's phantom form didn't originate here at all, but slipped in from some undiscovered universe? Hishi's expression softened. If that's the case, Carl might not be a threat to us. Chapter 292, Carl in Resistance. The Tiandao civilization was famed for its unparalleled wisdom. When Hishi learned that Ethan had pushed beyond the 60% threshold of brain development, she finally understood why even the Grand Clock posed no threat to him. Once a civilization's brain development, or more accurately, its level of intellectual evolution, surpasses 60%, not even the Grand Clock can predict its trajectory, she said, her voice brimming with awe. Her conclusion wasn't speculative. Based on her joint research with Holy Kesha, they determined that no biological life form could ordinarily exceed that mark. Of course, they operated within a supergod universe, where such measures of brain development made sense. What Hishi really meant was that Ethan and his people lay beyond the Grand Clock's calculating range. Carl, the god of death, probably hadn't grasped this yet. Otherwise, would he still dare contemplate opposing Ethan? We call it the level of intellectual evolution, not merely brain development, Ethan corrected gently. When it came to superlative minds, Ethan stood alone at the summit. Not even Tony, cursed, some said, by the very knowledge he wielded, could rival him. This boundless intellect was, without question, Ethan's greatest asset. Ethan studied the shimmering ripples of the organic force field, still jittery and unstable, and shook his head. It's buggy, yes, but it's not in the same league as the superbrain. More often than not, Superman resolves those glitches just by engaging his superbrain and thinking them through. My own superbrain may not match Da Chao's, but it's the strongest one tier below the top. Designing a life form whose cognition outpaces the big clock's calculations should be child's play. She crossed her arms, her eyes never leaving the pulsing energy. So you've been lying to me this whole time. Ethan gave her a confident half-smile. It wasn't a lie, it was a temptation. Her gaze sharpened. She knew exactly what he meant, his clandestine swap of Ansu silver for extraordinary abilities. She let out a low whistle. Honestly, who would have guessed that a god-king of your stature moonlights as a dealer? You're hiding in plain sight. But tell me this, how could you ever be sure Kesha would keep her end of the deal? What's to stop her from just going offline? Hishi's brow furrowed. You can't simply pull someone offline like that. Ethan shook his head, echoing her thought. Exactly. Kesha's too formidable to be knocked out of the network at will. Hishi studied him for a moment, then nodded as if she'd reached the same verdict. The question still lingered between them. When a power like Kesha's was involved, who really held the upper hand? I can hold her off for a few seconds. Ethan said quietly. That'll be enough time for me to finish her. Hishi froze for a heartbeat, then draped her thigh over Ethan's shoulders. The sheer white fabric of her panties stretched taut across her curves, a sight he'd never expected. She arched an eyebrow at him. Is the gap really that large? Ethan met her gaze without flinching. You're already among the best. In the dark universe, no one withstands you for even a second. Within that split second, your mind runs through hundreds of trillions of calculations. That's beyond astronomical. But a single misstep, even a fraction of a second's delay, and you could be dead. That's where I come in. She absorbed his words, a flicker of respect in her eyes. She nodded once, then fell silent. Elsewhere, Huaye's faction was in crisis. The celestial civilization was in full celebration, and while Ethan moved forward with calm assurance, Huaye and her allies found themselves demoralized. They had expected a reward for their efforts, but instead, the angel civilization had been handed over to the Tiandao alliance. Ruoning raged at He, branding her a traitor. How could she betray her own kind, selling out the angel's interests? Why not have chosen Huaye's team? The accusation hung in the air like a bitter curse. Okay, enough with the scolding. What's our next move? Huaye looked at Karl, the god of death, his expression a mix of exhaustion and urgency. Karl's voice was as calm and unyielding as ever. Prepare for all-out war. Huaye hesitated. A full-scale war against the Tiandao civilization? How do we even begin? Their small band represented the last line of defense in the known universe. No one here believed for a second that the Tiandao civilization would simply stop its expansion. How do we start? How do we fight back? Huaye pressed. He ran a hand through his hair. She is ridiculously powerful, and now she's joined forces with the Way of Heaven. Whatever advantage she gave us has vanished, and to make things worse, the Archive of Sacred Knowledge and the Arms Vault both ended up in the hands of Ethan. He's practically invincible now. I doubt even Kai Sha's resurrection would stand a chance against him. Huaye's complaints tumbled out in a cascade of worry and frustration. He'd always found Karl's resolve unnerving. If the god of death truly held back, then He-Shi's downfall would have come long ago. Karl shook his head. Not so fast. Even if He-Shi has sworn herself to the Tiandao civilization, they won't trust her immediately. She won't gain access to their inner sanctums, neither their knowledge archives nor their weapon forges. For now, she remains an outsider to their core. He paused, letting the words sink in. That buys us time, and time is the one thing we still have on our side. Hexie still can't access the Sacred Knowledge Vault or the weapons arsenal, so there's no need to be nervous, Ruoning said, dismissing their concerns. These assets remain under our control, he added, turning to Anisid. With you in our hands, once Angel Yan is eliminated, you'll inherit the vault and arsenal. At last, the Tao-Ti legions swept into Fraser without opposition, razing the city to the ground and capturing Anisid alive. Karl, the god of death, reported back. In the ruins, we also uncovered vast veins of dark silver. It looks like the angel civilization left it behind. With that ore, we can equip all our troops with silver blades. Really? Huaye's eyes widened. He knew better than anyone how lethal those weapons were. The devastation wrought by Sumali's silver blade was still fresh in everyone's minds. If silver weapons became commonplace, even third-generation super warriors or fledgling gods would fall in seconds. Ruoning nodded thoughtfully. Next, let's train Tianja in wormhole transport. That way, he won't have to rely on a silver blade at all. Acknowledging the plan, the group set their next moves in motion, confident their grip on the sacred knowledge and the arsenal would soon be absolute. All right, if it's a straight one-for-one exchange, my heavenly scum troops can handle it, Huaye declared, his confidence fully restored. Even more crucial was the pact he'd struck with death god Karl. Every bit of their dark data would be backed up. No matter how many of them fell, they could be resurrected. Their new strategy was simple. Wreak havoc, inflict as much damage as possible, and buy time for Ethan and his forces to arrive. But Huaye had no desire to fight on the front lines himself. Instead, he would focus on breeding male angel descendants, turning them into elite heavenly scum, and forming an entirely new fighting force he called the Triangle Army. As for the Tao-Ti warriors who'd been grievously wounded and unceremoniously abandoned by death god Karl, they would serve one purpose only, genetic raw material. The same fate awaited the crippled giant wolf core. Meanwhile, the cache of dark silver hidden by the angels in Fraser would be reforged into razor-sharp blades. These weapons would train the heavenly scum in wormhole teleportation, and in the grim lesson of dodging enemy silver blades, lest they themselves be traded away in exchange. With every detail in place, Huaye turned to his second-in-command, Ruoning, and gave the order. Let's pay a visit to the Triangle Armies at Commander. And so, intent on building an unstoppable force of resurrected warriors armed with forbidden silver, Huaye and Ruoning set out to meet the supreme leader of the Triangle and unleash the next phase of their plan. They had to bring the triangle into their fold, especially its inscrutable leader. Without Death God Karl's enormous clock, locating that elusive figure would have been impossible. Now, with war looming on the horizon, every ally mattered. Once word of Ethan and Tiandao's fearsome power spread, the triangle would have no choice but to stand with them. Chapter 293, Angel Yan is liberated. He Xi and the others stood ready for battle, their nerves taut, but their resolve unshaken. In the heart of the command tent, Ethan paced amid flickering torchlight, deep in thought. Karl, the god of death, had been lured into their trap, his chaotic appearances nothing more than bait to draw the angelic civilization into Ethan's grasp. With Angel Yan's liberation now within reach, Karl had outlived his purpose. Ethan's mind raced with one question. How does one kill a god? Before he could settle on an answer, Liang Bing slipped in quietly, bowing low. At her side stood Shay in her demon form, though tonight she bore no horns or fangs. Dressed in a midnight black sword cloak, her long, straight hair drifted around her like a silken veil. "Your Majesty," Liang Bing said, voice steady. "Shay pays her respects," added Shi, inclining her head with perfect courtesy. Ethan glanced at Shay without interest. She was useful, but hardly captivating to him. Turning back to Liang Bing, he asked bluntly, "What news do you bring?" Liang Bing met his gaze without flinching. "Angel Yan's bonds have been broken. The celestial prison shattered at dawn. We have her back." Ethan's lips curved into a faint, satisfied smile. The liberation of Angel Yan was complete. Now only one task remained, disposing of Karl, the god of death, once and for all. "Your Majesty, may I ask what I should do going forward?" Liang Bing asked, settling herself comfortably on Ethan's lap. It wasn't every day someone could sit so casually upon the throne of the most powerful god in the known universe. Shuyi watched from the sidelines, a flicker of surprise crossing her face before envy took hold. From the moment she'd first encountered Ethan, his divine presence had captivated her completely. How she longed for just a sliver of his attention, yet she knew all too well that he showed little interest in her. Resigned, she folded her hands in her lap. Liang Bing, however, was unaware of how deeply Ethan's aura could enthrall. Despite her own formidable mental powers, she'd felt the pull of his charm the instant they'd met. She'd even conducted extensive research on seductive auras, and her ties to the demonic civilization had helped her resist sinking entirely under Ethan's spell, unlike Shi, who threw herself at him the moment she tasted that intoxicating power. Ethan's voice was level as he spoke. "If Shi wishes to pursue me, I won't stand in her way." Liang Bing's eyes widened only slightly at his frank reply. She'd expected no less from the God King. Still, she pressed her question gently. "Then, Your Majesty, what would you have me do?" He regarded her for a long moment before answering, his tone warm but decisive. "Continue mastering the arcane arts. Your talent is too precious to waste. Beyond that, follow your heart, so long as it remains true." Liang Bing nodded, a smile tugging at her lips. Shui Yi watched in silence, torn between admiration and the lingering ache of unrequited longing. But in Ethan's presence, all other feelings seemed to fade away. "Your Majesty, I've brought Angel Yan," Liang Bing announced, bowing as she stepped into the throne room's golden haze. "I entrust him to your care." King Ethan's brow rose. "Did you hide him in your dark plane?" In theory, anyone could be concealed there, but he never imagined Liang Bing would dare trap an angelic sovereign in her own shadowy domain. She shook her head firmly. "No, Your Majesty. He was imprisoned in Shui's darkness. I only freed him." At her words, a figure staggered through the grand doors. Angel Yan collapsed to his knees, his wings ragged, robes in tatters, utterly depleted. Each labored breath echoed through the vaulted hall. Angel Yan lifted his head, blinking against the light. On the throne sat King Ethan, immaculate in crimson silk, with Liang Bing surprisingly perched on his lap. Summoning his last strength, the angel whispered, "Your Majesty." Ethan leaned forward, amber eyes playing with amusement. "Well, Angel Yan," he said, "you certainly know how to make an entrance, always at your worst, yet never failing to turn up here." Despite the jest, concern laced his tone. Angel Yan's cheeks flushed, but he straightened with what dignity remained. His mind drifted back to the chaos unleashed by Ethan's arrival. The butterfly effect had cost him more suffering than any prophecy hinted at. Still, he was grateful. His honor remained intact, and before the king's benevolent gaze, he found a flicker of hope amid the ruins of his fate. In the original saga, they burdened me with every demeaning nickname they could think of. King Tianrun, not because I was damp, but because they claimed I moved with lightning speed, and the even crueler, prodigal bitch. They quibbled over dowries, too. Angel Jixin, mockingly called the leaky black-hearted padded jacket, and his wasteful twin. Yet none of that shame compared to my darkest hour, when Demon Queen Morgana seized me the moment I claimed the vault of sacred knowledge and weapons. She forced King Tianji Hexi to hand over Angel Nebula and Fraser as her price for my life. That's how I found myself kneeling here, stripped of title and virtually imprisoned in Angel Yan's throne room. Through clenched teeth, I demanded, does the God King intend to seize the vault of sacred knowledge and weapons using me as bait? Angel Yan rose with effort, refusing to show weakness. She was the king of angels. She would not let me see her fall. You're overthinking this, she said, her voice steady. I care nothing for that vault, and besides, you're no longer the king of angels. Ethan, my old friend, formerly known as Luther, smiled as though he knew a secret. Angel Yan frowned, perplexed. Had Angel Nebula abandoned their claim? Was Enesid already chosen as the new king of angels behind her back? The questions hung in the tense air of the throne room, unanswered, at least for now. Angel Yan didn't mind, really. If she, the retired king of the heavenly court, had truly renounced his title as king of angels, or if he'd merely announced his departure from the angelic realm, she could accept it. I'm off, she said, standing. Liang Bing, sensing that Ethan would summon she next, slipped away quickly. Ethan didn't stop him. Angel Yan watched Liang Bing and Shui Yi vanish down the corridor, puzzled by their abrupt exit. A moment later, a familiar figure emerged from the shadows. Need a change of scenery? He asked with a half-smile. She strode forward, rattling off tidbits of celestial intelligence, then suddenly paused. He'd noticed Angel Yan. She recognized him at once, the Tianji King himself. Your Majesty the Tianji King, what brings you here? She exclaimed, incredulous. His presence was surprising enough, but it was what he'd just told Ethan that troubled Angel Yan most. She understood every word he'd said, yet found it impossible to accept the implications. She inclined his head, voice calm. Because I am Ethan's guardian angel, it was only natural I should be here. Angel Yan's brow furrowed. Then tell me, where is the angel civilization now? She's expression darkened. There is no longer an angel civilization, Angel Yan answered softly, though the words tasted bitter on her tongue. Sheng Yan has fallen. She only shook his head, as if silently mourning a loss too profound for words. Angel Yan's voice trembled as she stared at Ethan. There's no angel civilization left? Ethan's expression was grave. The angel civilization was overrun by Huaye and Ruoning. They forced us out of the Angel Nebula, and now we've been absorbed into the Tiandao civilization. Angel Yan's heart pounded. As she spoke, he slipped her a small data module containing classified records. Strictly speaking, Angel Yan could have pulled the files directly from the net, but she refused to risk it. She'd heard too many rumors of hidden traps in cyberspace that could implant secret backdoors, or even siphon off the sacred archives and weapon schematics she'd sworn to protect. She accepted the module with shaking hands. As soon as she activated it, the truth flooded her mind in an instant. Her legs buckled and a cold wave of despair washed over her. For a moment, she felt herself slipping into darkness. She was already at her side, catching her before she hit the deck. Steadying her shoulders, he murmured, "You're not alone. We'll face this together." Angel Yan drew a shuddering breath, clinging to his support. The world as she knew it had vanished, but with she and Ethan by her side, she vowed she would fight to reclaim what was lost. "It's not your fault, Angel Yan," he said gently, offering her a reassuring smile. "Everything in the known universe is shifting so quickly." She could see how heavy the weight of it all was pressing down on Angel Yan's shoulders. In the brief time since her husband went offline, their world had unraveled faster than anyone could have imagined, upending institutions, alliances, even basic certainties. All she could do was stand by her friend as the chaos swirled around them both. Chapter 294, Death God Karl Attacks. Who could have foreseen such sweeping changes? Even the treasury of sacred knowledge held no record of this possibility. The shift was simply too abrupt. Without the angel civilization, what am I to do? Queen Yan asked, her voice trembling with uncertainty. She sighed. He had no ready answer. Yan stood apart from the others. Once the proud ruler of the Angel Nebula, she could never truly assimilate into the Tiandao civilization. Now she was both its new queen and its greatest pariah. You're not like the rest of us, she said gently, glancing over at Ethan. You still have a choice. You can rebuild the angel civilization from the ground up. Ethan, standing nearby, watched in silence. She knew Ethan wouldn't object to Yan forging her own path. But the Angel Nebula is gone, Yan protested. How can I possibly restore what's been destroyed? She ran a hand through his hair, his brow furrowed. I wish I had the answer, Your Majesty. I'm as lost as you are. He paused, then bowed his head. Give me a moment to think, please. Yan let out a heavy sigh and nodded. Very well. She gave a curt nod in return and fell into thoughtful silence, leaving the fallen queen to wrestle with her fate. Ethan met Angel Yan's steady gaze. You're free to leave whenever you wish. I won't stand in your way. Angel Yan inclined her head. Thank you, Ethan. For now, I must confer with my sisters. I promise I won't trouble Tiandao. She watched from the sidelines with a knowing smile. She wasn't surprised Angel Yan chose to seek her fellow angels' counsel rather than act on impulse, proof that Angel Yan still lacked firm convictions of her own. Had she slipped in a few carefully worded suggestions, Angel Yan might have pledged herself to the Tiandao civilization, but she did nothing, preferring to let events run their course. Ethan, too, remained indifferent to whether Angel Yan stayed or departed. Suddenly, an urgent message from Qilin crackled through Ethan's mind. No, Ethan. Death God Karl has invaded Blue Star and is attacking Xinjiao. Qilin's voice trembled with panic. In a blink, Ethan vanished and reappeared on Blue Star's surface, at her side. Before them stood a towering figure draped in a blood-red cloak, his hooded face concealed in shadow. Dark waves of void energy rippled from his outstretched hands. You cannot hope to defeat me, Death God Karl intoned, his voice low and ominous. Surrender now. Beside Qilin, Du Changwei swirled strands of void energy around himself and the Archangel, bracing for Karl's assault. The ground quaked under the Death God's approach, and the air crackled with deadly power. Together, Ethan, Qilin, and Du Changwei steeled themselves for the battle that would decide the fate of Xinjiao, and perhaps all of Blue Star. Ethan knew both Qilin and Du Changwei were outfitted with void engines, and if he struck head-on, he could easily overwhelm them. Instead, he unleashed a precise pulse of high-frequency void energy, disrupting the core programs that governed their genetic enhancements. Qilin and Du Changwei screamed as their engines spasmed out of control. Du Changwei, however, refused to yield. Deep within her, the super space-time gene engine synchronized with her galaxy power void engine, beginning to rewrite the very structure of the surrounding space. Reality bent and twisted, stars warping into impossible shimmering arcs. Karl, the god of death, shook his head in frustration. He raised his scythe, ready to intervene, when in an instant Ethan materialized before him. Karl's eyes widened, but before he could react, Ethan vanished again. From the shadows, Ethan cracked a wry smile. Nice diversion, he murmured. Your decoy wasn't half bad, but the real me is still near the Styx Nebula. At that moment, Qilin's voice rang out, trembling with relief. Husband. She dropped to one knee, her eyes fixed on the spot where Ethan had appeared. She had only spoken his name, and in the next heartbeat he was there. The surge of security was exhilarating. Du Changwei shared her excitement, but kept her composure. She allowed herself the smallest curve of her lips as she watched Ethan's phantom image dissolve into nothingness. Ethan stepped back into view, arms crossed, surveying the chaotic scene. Qilin's hands flew to her mouth in awe. Du Changwei's void engines hummed as they recalibrated. Without breaking his calm, Ethan gave a single nod. The space around them rippled once more, this time under his control. The balance of power had shifted, and everyone here knew it. With Ethan's return, victory was closer than ever. Ethan materialized at the edge of the chamber, just in time to see Karl, the death god, shudder and vanish. Du Changwei, still trembling from the encounter, ran forward. Your Majesty, thank the heavens you're safe. With a casual snap of his fingers, Ethan restored both Qilin's powers and Empress Du's void engine to full function. He turned to face Qilin and Du Changwei. Here's what happened. Carl slipped into a soldier's shadow plane, then struck Xin Zhao out of nowhere. By the time we arrived, Xin Zhao had already fallen unconscious. It looks like Carl got the drop on him. Qilin pressed forward, her voice tight with urgency. Ethan glanced toward the far wall, where Xin Zhao lay sprawled in pain. Angel Zhiqin collapsed at his side. Neither of them had expected a god of Carl's caliber to invade Blue Star so brazenly. They believed their vigilance and the forbidden technologies they'd unearthed would keep them safe. But Carl's cunning was on another level, and he'd exploited their one moment of overconfidence. Now the trio faced a grim reality. Carl had struck first, and Blue Star's defenders were reeling. Yet Ethan's calm resolve hinted they still had a chance to turn the tide. Ethan understood that it wasn't a question of willful ignorance, but rather that the galaxy's power had grown so pervasive that mass production no longer held much appeal. For its own advancement, the Blue Star civilization would inevitably harness the Void Controller's infinite resources and fully automated construction capabilities. Yet that overflow of cosmic energy was meant for the Tiandao civilization, not for Carl, the god of death. And make no mistake, the Void Controller was no ordinary weapon. Forged by the angel Zhiqin with Xin Zhao's help, it was the most formidable plug-in ever devised. In the original design, it was known as the Heroic Core, but Xin Zhao renamed it Courage. Though Courage's frequencies and program functions closely resemble those of Xiangxin, the Void Controller ignores harmonic tuning. It simply taps into the Void's boundless matter and builds whatever it requires. Ethan watched in silence as the systems flickered to life. It was Carl, the god of death, who first detected the sudden surge of activity on Blue Star, and that was when everything changed. Ethan leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing as he reviewed the latest intelligence. It was true that the Tiandao civilization stood as the galaxy's bulwark, guarding the Milky Way against outside threats, but the god of death, Carl, had long placed secret operatives throughout the Chiwu star system. Through one of those hidden hands, Carl had uncovered the recent anomaly and immediately assessed its prize, Xin Zhao. Until now, Carl had been wary of provoking the Tiandao directly. He preferred to strike from the shadows, gathering power quietly before revealing his hand. Learning of Xin Zhao's unique potential, he set his sights on eliminating, or better yet, recruiting, this newly discovered asset. Angel Zhiqin burst into the room, alarm etched on her face. "Carl has the Void Controller?" she demanded. Her voice trembled. The Void Controller wasn't just an ancient relic. It was a weapon capable of tearing the very fabric of reality. If the god of death mastered it, the known universe truly would be in peril. Ethan offered a bemused smile. "Relax, it's only a Void Controller." He spoke as though discussing a broken tool, not a cosmic doomsday device. In truth, Carl had underestimated both Xin Zhao and the controller's hidden capabilities. The struggles Carl anticipated were nothing more than diversions, traps Ethan had already calculated and dismantled. And as for Carl himself, let him cling to the hope that the controller will save him. After all, desperate hope makes for the sweetest downfall. Angel Zhiqin stumbled into the throne room, panic in her eyes. "Your Majesty, God King, please save Xin Zhao. The void energy Carl left behind is far too potent, and he's used specialized algorithmic interference to rewrite Xin Zhao's body and genetic engine. I've exhausted every method I know, but I can't undo it." Ethan rose from his obsidian throne, his expression calm and unyielding. "Blue Star is a vassal of my realm," he said, voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "This matter falls under my protection. I will see Xin Zhao restored." A collective sigh of relief swept through the gathered nobles and warriors. At Ethan's words, hope returned to Blue Star. Chapter 295, Angel Yan's Burden. She had meant to thank Ethan for rescuing Angel Yan, but what came next caught her completely off guard. "I never expected Carl would go after Xin Zhao," Ethan said, shaking his head. She studied him thoughtfully. "It isn't all that surprising. Blue Star's been performing exceptionally well. They've drawn too much attention, and you can't exactly stay hidden when you shine that brightly." Ethan's brow furrowed. "Is Xin Zhao all right?" "He's safe," she replied, "though it looks like Carl, the so-called god of death, has managed to get his hands on the Void Controller. Thank the stars your little apprentice didn't hand over the core code to the Sacred Knowledge Vault. If Xin Zhao had gotten that, the secret would have been blown wide open. Ethan smiled, a spark of pride in his eyes. Ji Xin would never betray us like that. She rolled her eyes. Ethan's expression brightened, proof that you can never predict what your apprentice will do next. But how did you even know Ji Xin had the vault's core code? He asked, his curiosity piqued. She's face fell into a surprised frown. Because she told me. She was certain she hadn't told Ethan about this, and she never ran her latest data through him either. As the God King, Ethan's systems were sealed against ordinary interfaces. If she wanted to link with any other super soldier or divine being, just as Xin Zhao had with Angel Jishin, she would have needed a formal data docking procedure. It was the only way a guardian angel and her charge could truly synchronize. I know all that, Ethan said, smiling. But is it really so strange? Of course it is, she exclaimed, blinking. She could see from Ethan's expression that he had no intention of explaining himself. At that moment, Angel Jixin, her faithful little seraph, hurried in and bowed. Master, he said eagerly, I plan to hand over the core code of the Sacred Knowledge Treasury to Xin Zhao. But he lacks sufficient processing power, so I thought he could build his own unit. She froze. Her apprentice was talking about giving away the treasury's most guarded secret. Why would you think that's acceptable? She cried. The treasury's core code wasn't just any data. It was the very heart of their power. Angel Jixin hesitated. Well, you didn't seem opposed? She drew in a shaky breath. Nothing about this made sense. Yet Ethan remained unruffled, watching them both with those inscrutable eyes, and somehow she knew there was more to his silence than either of them suspected. Ethan's expression grew grave. If this core code gets out, it becomes a weapon against the Angelic Treasury's defenses. Anyone could reverse engineer our vault. Angel Jixin blinked, her voice hesitant. But Master, didn't you once say that the power of the galaxy is our future? Ethan closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose, wariness washing over him. Not everything can be handed out, even in the future. In truth, it's the way of heaven that's our future, because the way of heaven commands the galaxy's power. Jixin cocked her head. What about Xin Zhao? Ethan opened his eyes and let out a slow breath. Xin Zhao isn't the angel's future anymore. He's yours. But the core code that seals the angelic treasury is far too important to give away lightly. If you insist on offering it, you'd have to petition Angel Yan, the newly crowned king of angels, for his approval. Angel Jixin's eyes widened in dismay. Ethan doubted his earnest apprentice would ever have the courage to make such a request. Ethan emerged from the mist into a sunlit glade and immediately found himself surrounded by his angel sisters. Their eyes widened in shock and relief. Brother Ethan, one cried. Ethan, you're alive! Another added. Are you all right? A third asked, reaching out to steady him. Wings fluttered as they closed ranks around him, concern etched on every face. Ethan managed a reassuring smile. I'm fine, he said. Morgana released me. A ripple of surprise ran through the group. What about Devil Number 1? Someone ventured. We thought he'd rescued you. Ethan shook his head. No devil came to my aid. Morgana simply threw me out. She wanted to avoid any complications. At that, Angel Leng's voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. She stepped forward, arms folded and eyes cold. You're a disgrace, she declared. Queen Keisha was wrong to name you King of Angels. Her harsh words stung. Ethan bowed his head for a moment, then lifted it again. You're right, Leng. I'm not fit to be king. Her contempt had done what countless lectures never could. It snapped him into clarity. He turned to face his sisters, determination glowing in his eyes. I've realized something important. I cannot rebuild our civilization alone, nor should I wear a crown I'm unworthy of. When the time comes, we will find a true leader, someone stronger and wiser, and I will stand by her as she restores our people. Angel Leng's scowl faltered, replaced by genuine concern. What's gotten into you? Ethan met her gaze calmly. Nothing's wrong. I've simply learned what truly matters and who must lead us forward. Next, I'm heading for Fraser, Angel Yan announced with a confident smile as she turned to Angel Leng. Leng blinked in surprise. She had never seen Yan so composed. Fraser? Leng whispered. That outpost was overrun by the Taudi, and I've heard Enicid has fallen to the sticks. Angel Moy's eyes widened in alarm. Fraser's fallen too? Yan's expression darkened. None of this was in the data she slipped her. Had King Tianji deliberately kept her in the dark? We learned Fraser was in jeopardy before the war even began, she admitted, voice low. When the time came, Tianji chose to risk everything to rescue you and abandon Fraser. It wasn't until we joined forces with the Tiandao civilization that we confirmed Fraser had truly been lost. Leng sagged against a nearby pillar. Yan drew a steadying breath. She had pledged herself to uphold the one rightful heir to the Angel King's legacy, no matter the cost. Yet with Enicid under Styx's control, even if they retook it, their claim to the throne would be fatally compromised. Angel Yan closed her eyes for a moment, steeling herself for the battles still to come. The council chamber had fallen silent. Any attempt to rerun the selection from the Holy Knowledge Archive would exhaust the energy of countless stars, so they'd decided to abandon it. Angel Leng glanced at Ethan's troubled face and couldn't keep quiet. "Give it up, Ethan," she said gently. "We've all accepted our lives here." Leng reached out, but Ethan shrugged her hand away. He looked distant, as if transformed. "Is that really how you feel?" she pressed. "You don't want the angel civilization anymore?" Ethan turned to face the assembled angels. "I will always care about our people," he replied, "but life in the heavenly Tao civilization isn't so bad." A murmur ran through the circle. Leng stepped closer. "If Queen Kesha returns, you'd go back?" He nodded. "Without hesitation. The heavenly Tao has its merits, but the angel civilization is my home. I'll never forget it." Laughter bubbled up among the others, but Ethan felt a cold knot tighten in his chest. He realized that most of them only yearned for the angel civilization when Queen Kesha led them, not for what it was now. And the angel nebula itself was gone forever. There was no returning. He couldn't fault them. Perhaps life among the heavenly Tao was genuinely better. Yet he refused to accept it. As the civilization's prime deity, the burden of its fate rested squarely on his shoulders. He would not abandon it. Queen Kesha refuses to accept a future like that. Angel Yan fell silent. She knew she still had to venture into the Styx Nebula to rescue Enicid, but with the Tiandao civilization preparing to send its own forces there, she couldn't leave just yet. Chapter 296, An Unprecedented War Among the Gods. The long-awaited moment had finally arrived. From the heart of the celestial Tian civilization, millions of divine soldiers and generals erupted into motion, pouring through the portals en route to the Styx. Their deployment shook every corner of the known universe. At the head of this incomparably vast army stood Ethan. With unwavering resolve, he issued a declaration of war against all other civilizations, an open proclamation that the celestial realm would henceforth govern the cosmos. His goal was clear: to demonstrate the unassailable might of his people and establish a new order in the heavens. For civilizations still grappling with the very concepts of gods and super warriors, ideas they'd only glimpsed through the propaganda of angelic sects and supreme seminaries, this display was nothing short of apocalyptic. Until now, they'd believed third-generation super soldiers were the stuff of legends. Yet here they were, staring in disbelief at fleets upon fleets of these elite warriors, each honed to perfection in the celestial forges. Even the Liang and angelic civilizations, whose citizens had sacrificed lifetimes to achieve third-generation status, could scarcely accept what they were witnessing. They understood better than anyone how arduous the path to that level could be. And yet Ethan's forces had manifested millions of them at once, poised to reshape the balance of power across the universe. So began a war without precedent, one that would test the very foundations of divine authority and determine once and for all who would rule the heavens. Now they had suddenly become third-generation super soldiers, each capable of living for millennia. Even second-generation angels, already famed for their longevity, would be envious of lives measured in thousands of years. And yet the Liang civilization had gone even further, pioneering a technology that no previous warriors possessed: the direct conversion of dark energy into kinetic force. Because earlier generations of super soldiers lacked any dark energy drive, the Super Seminary would have to teach Jie Xiaolun and the others from the ground up. This capability wasn't woven into their genetic programming. They wouldn't master it until 2 days from now. In truth, that dark energy propulsion was the hallmark of the third-generation super gene, an ability reserved for only the highest-tier warriors, or even deities. Faced with such astonishing power, the assembled soldiers could do nothing but gasp at the heavenly civilization's achievements and feel a deeper, more heartfelt reverence for God King Ethan. And after learning how the Tiandao civilization had secured unlimited resources by mastering void technology, neither Heishi nor any of the others were surprised at the thought of deploying millions of explosive soldiers. No one outside suspects just how much the heavenly civilization's divine power can be rattled, or that the Styx Nebula can field so many demigods. Its third-generation super soldiers are in fact true demigods. When the Styx Nebula's army appeared on the galactic stage, the Tiandao Empire's forces had no idea what was coming. They assumed their might would dwarf any rival. But Karl, the god of death, unleashed an army that shattered that illusion. From the shadowed depths of the Styx Nebula surged over 20,000 Tianju, third-generation divinities all. Each one bore wings of purple-black, armor forged of dark silver, and a blade of the same unearthly metal. Where millions of Tiandao super soldiers could only make the universe tremble, these 20,000 Tianju threatened to shake it to its foundations. Not even in the glory days of the Kamigawa civilization had so many true gods been mustered at once. And if gods ever become commonplace, they lose their majesty, and their power becomes no more remarkable than a standard fourth-generation super soldier. By revealing this hidden force, the Styx Nebula has struck back at Ethan and at the entire Tiandao civilization. Wit, Hech, Karl's divine legions arrayed against them. The galactic balance trembles on the edge of annihilation. She frowned as she turned to Ethan. It looks like our partnership is putting a lot of pressure on Karl. The god of death, Karl, hadn't tried to hide his experiments with void technology in the first place. After all, his wife was gone and no one could stand in his way. He'd already seized the void controller from Xin Zhao during a recent assault, and he was even now attempting to reverse engineer it beside the great clock. With the void controller in hand, Karl's genius for forbidden science would soon render him unstoppable. What Karl feared most was the growing imbalance in the universe. When the heavenly civilization devoured the angels and brokered a fragile peace, he realized the cosmic scales had tipped dangerously. That realization had driven him to seek out the Triangle's leader and ultimately to strike at Xin Zhao for the void controller. Now that Huaye had successfully integrated the device, combining it with the Super Seminary's largest power module and a high-frequency black hole engine, his strength had skyrocketed. Karl believed he could finally take Ethan in a direct confrontation. Yet beneath all that power, Huaye remained deeply afraid of death. His ambition was as vast as his cowardice, and she knew that sooner or later his fear would be his undoing. Ethan had no intention of confronting the original Void Controller directly. Instead, he tapped into its limitless reserves and unleashed over 20,000 third-generation godlings, being so vicious they were nicknamed the scum of the Divine Order. Ruoning, stubborn as ever, refused to call in Huaye. She insisted their new horde could stand toe-to-toe with the entire heavenly host on its own. "We don't need Huaye's help," she declared. "With this many third-generation godlings, we can handle whatever angels send against us." Ethan exchanged a glance with He-She. "Don't be so sure," he said quietly. "Huaye and his companions have only a handful of Heavenly Blade combat celestials in tow, just the ones they managed to capture. Their quantum cores simply can't power 20,000 third-gen godlings. At best, their troops will fight on par with ordinary super soldiers." He-She's brow furrowed. "But what if Huaye lays his hands on the little timepiece?" he asked, voice edged with worry. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then all bets are off." Ethan's smile was calm as he surveyed the situation. Huaye doesn't possess that knowledge, and neither does Ruoning. Karl, the god of death, holds it, but if he ever shared it with Huaye, all control would be lost. Even with those countless little clocks at his fingertips, would Huaye still obey him? It was obvious that Huaye might yet grow far stronger, but Karl would never allow him to become so powerful that he slipped from the god of death's grasp. The Void Controller had already reached its limit, and the long-promised fifth-generation divine body for Huaye had never appeared. Clearly, Carl feared that granting it would tip the balance irretrievably in Huaye's favor, and so he had held back. Unfortunately for both of them, Ethan had resolved to shatter their alliance with the overwhelming might of his heavenly Tao. No matter how desperately they struggled, their defeat would only heighten the drama of their final collapse. She inclined her head in understanding. She'd already considered this angle, of course, but her reminder ensured that Ethan would leave no loose ends. With that subtle confirmation, the two of them readied themselves to watch Carl and Huaye's downfall unfold. Ethan studied the tactical display with mild amusement. Their pantheon might be small in number, but they commanded millions of celestial warriors and legions of battle gods. Against the enemy's tens of thousands of corrupted god forms and their own millions of scum soldiers, Ethan's forces held an overwhelming advantage. The combined might of the Space Celestial Corps and the Heavenly Tao Armada would shatter any opposition. "This is going to be a protracted war," he murmured, "but with our inexhaustible resources and boundless energy reserves, we'll fight until every last enemy is defeated." Alarms blared, slicing through the calm on the bridge. "Outskirts of the Styx Nebula," the comm officer cried. "Enemy fleet detected, closing fast." Ruo Ning's eyes flicked to her hollow console as it lit up with incoming battle god signatures. She tapped a finger on the glowing readouts, frustration tightening her jaw. So few of these scum creatures actually showed tactical acumen. She'd been forced to intervene and personally direct their battle gods. There simply wasn't time to train new commanders in the heat of combat. Ethan glanced at her. "We'll manage," he said, voice steady. "Just focus on those wave formations. I'll handle the rest." As the first enemy vessels sliced into sensor range, Ethan straightened in his command chair, determination flashing in his eyes. The war for the Styx Nebula had begun in earnest, and he knew they could not afford to lose. Chapter 297, The Age of the Void. High above the Styx Nebula's inner ring, an ancient war unlike any before has erupted. Cataclysmic energy discharges, measured in astronomical intensities, are being hurled across the cosmos. Any planet unfortunate enough to be struck is instantly annihilated, wiped from existence. In this maelstrom, even the mightiest warships have been reduced to little more than armored bunkers, desperately trying to withstand the onslaught. Cries of battle pierce the void. For heaven. The way of heaven reigns supreme. Kill in the name of King Huaye. For the heavenly palace. On one side stand the Kamigawa forces, on the other an alliance of triangle civilizations. The god of death, Carl, employed his dreaded physical persuasion to force the triangle leaders' total submission. Before long, the mottled blue and hundreds of other triangle states had joined the fray, unleashing swarms of monstrous sea creatures alongside their fleets. The losses have been staggering, even demigods have fallen in this titanic clash. Yet the Tiandao civilization maintains a decisive edge. Their seemingly endless ranks of celestial warriors, backed by powerful deities, dominate the battlefield. Still, with stakes this high and energies this wild, no outcome is guaranteed. Delana flung a medium-sized solar flare from her palm, incinerating scores of sky scum and triangular drones in an instant. She threw back her head and laughed, the mirth of a demigod echoing across the battlefield. "Ha! Behold the power of a true god!" Raina only grinned. Before Delana could revel in her victory, a streak of silver light sliced through the air. The dark silver blade embedded itself with a resonant clang against Raina's armor, and stopped. "And Sue Silverblade?" Delana crowed in surprise. Raina's expression never wavered. She reached out, gripped the blade's hilt, and wrenched it free. If Delana thought that ancient metal could penetrate her defenses, she'd grossly underestimated her opponent. Raina's armor wasn't forged from any ordinary alloy. It was woven from a revolutionary supermaterial, pioneered by the Tiandao civilization's Void Technology Division. While other civilizations, like the Angel or Shenhe, still relied on rare metals, such as Ansu silver, the Tiandao masters had learned to define and create matter itself. Instead of mining raw elements, they simply rewrote the atomic structure on demand. This Krypton gold, as Ethan had christened it, surpassed Ansu silver in both tensile strength and hardness. Nothing short of a star-forged blade could hope to breach it, and even such weapons would snap like twigs against its surface. Delana's jaw dropped. Raina held the Ansu blade aloft, as effortless as twisting a twig. "You should have known better than to challenge me," she said, her voice cold and unyielding. With a swift flick, she sent the blade spinning from her hand, its sleek arc betraying the futility of Dylena's attack. Ethan watched from the command platform, arms folded. He'd admired Dylena's raw ferocity, but Raina's mastery of Tiandao's void-rewritten supermaterial was on another level entirely. As the smoke from the solar flare drifted away, one fact had become abundantly clear. In this war of gods and civilizations, sheer strength might dazzle, but it was the power to rewrite reality that would truly decide the victor. Chapter X: Revelation of Krypton Gold. When He-She first learned of Krypton Gold, her entire perspective on Tiandao civilization shifted. The implications were staggering. Tiandao's mastery extended across at least 4 towering fields: void technology, spatial articulation, conceptual rewriting, and material redefinition, on top of their ruthless genetic structure assaults. They had truly achieved an advanced, almost unfathomable level of development. "Heavens," He-She murmured, heart-pounding. "No wonder Ethan dismissed us as backward. He must have been comparing our primitive achievements to this." Only now did she realize how limited her own civilization's accomplishments looked in the face of void manipulation and instantaneous concept alteration. She felt, for the first time, like an unschooled bumpkin. But the one who took the harshest blow was Angel Yan. As the self-proclaimed creator god of the angel civilization, Angel Yan had long prided himself on his divine mandate to shape and guide his people. Yet against Tiandao's newly empowered forces, armed with the raw, reality-bending power of Krypton Gold, even his celestial host could do little more than stagger backwards. Together, the demonic realm of Tianza and the shadowy alliance known as the Triangle had once threatened Tiandao's borders. Yet now, equipped with Krypton Gold reactors fueling void engines, concept forging arrays, and matter recode arrays, Tiandao could sweep through those enemy lines in what would become a one-sided massacre. At worst, Tianja and the Triangle might secure a handful of token victories before being utterly routed. He-She closed her eyes, breathing deeply. The gulf between her world and Tiandao's had never seemed wider. And at the heart of that chasm lay one precious element, Krypton Gold, the keystone of a civilization that rewrote reality itself. After witnessing the conflict between the two great powers, Ansuyan no longer cares about money, energy, or resources. Even Angel Yan, who's only been offline for a few short years, returns to find a world utterly transformed. In that context, what use is her hoarded archive of sacred knowledge and weaponry? And if the angel civilization is ever rebuilt, it will likely serve only as a subsidiary of the heavenly Tao civilization. Damn it all! Liang Bing's eyes went wide. What is that weapon? Not even Ansuyan can stop it. He looked to the queen. Your Majesty, our diagnostics identify it as a supermaterial armament called the Krypton Gold Flying Dagger. It has no propulsion system whatsoever. Its only power is the unparalleled sharpness of its blade, capable of slicing through Ansu's silver. Atuo gasped in disbelief. Could it really be an ultra-material from the Dark Universe? Ethan staggered through the smoke and dust, his lungs burning as he slid against the nearest bulkhead for support. Across the ruined hangar, Liang Bing's face appeared on the tactical display, her eyes wide with disbelief. Is that dark silver? She muttered. No, it's been re-engineered at the molecular scale. They've essentially created Krypton Gold. Ruoning slammed her fist onto the table, rattling the instruments. Of course they'd hide a breakthrough like this, she snapped. If I hadn't triggered my 4th-gen divine body, I'd be dead right now, just like the foot soldiers out there. Ethan pressed a hand to his chest, still struggling for air. Those frontline troops only had the Ansu silver armor. It held out for a moment, but one swing from that thing tore through them. She glared at the hollow screen. They spent years mastering the Ansu silver blade, convinced one-on-one they'd be invincible. Yet my dark silver edge barely nicked him. Meanwhile, his Krypton Gold knives, swords, bullets, even arrows cut through our defenses as if they were paper. Liang Bing's lips pressed into a thin line. Our ranks are collapsing. The so-called triangles haven't faced real combat yet. They'll suffer the same fate. Ethan straightened. We can't afford another blunder. We need a sample of that Krypton Gold. Only then can we adapt our weapons and armor. Ruining tapped a finger on the display. Agreed. Here's what we'll do. Launch a diversionary strike on their flank. Send in stealth drones to breach the perimeter. Then, Ethan and Liang Bing slip through the gap, grab whatever material we can carry, and pull back before they realize what's happening. Ethan met her gaze. Understood. Ronan cracked a half smile. Don't get yourselves killed this time. I'm not sending another squad just so you can play heroes. Liang Bing gave a determined nod. Let's do it. Ethan exhaled and stepped back to the console. For our people, and to tip the scales in our favor. The war stilled as the hollow projector shifted to show the enemy's hidden superweapon. Stronger than anything they'd ever seen, its presence was a brutal reminder. If they hoped to win this war, they'd have to turn Krypton gold from a terror into their salvation. Ethan watched the holographic battle map flicker in the command center. Even from this far away, he could see how devastating the enemy's celestial generals were. Each of them could cut down a dozen, or even dozens, of Tian's foot soldiers in a single sweep. There was no straightforward way to stop them. The only hope lay in coordinating the Triad construct's psycho-electromagnetic strikes with a mental assault, but pulling that off was fiendishly difficult. And only the genuine, top-tier Triad units could inflict real damage. The mass-produced models simply couldn't breach a third-generation Super Warrior's defenses. Then came the pulse of energy, a ripple of psychic force layered with electromagnetic discharges. For a heartbeat, the celestial lines wavered. Seizing the moment, Admiral Kresh ordered a full withdrawal. The Tianza forces fell back, leaving behind a landscape torn apart by explosions and scorched earth. Hundreds of enemy corpses lay heaped among the wreckage, each one a potential blueprint for a god-level civilization if their remains were harvested and studied. The Tiandao Empire, ever unwilling to waste time on recycling, preferred to resurrect their fallen outright. With the Tianja's virtually unlimited resources, they would no doubt follow suit. Beyond their first defensive ring loomed the Styx Nebula's infamous barrier, refined over centuries to rival even the Angel Civilization's 19th defense grid, and farther out still floated the Meteor Belt, a churning field of razor-sharp space rocks poised to shred any vessel that slipped past the primary defenses. From his command seat, Ethan allowed himself a momentary sense of relief. They had bought themselves time to regroup, to strengthen their lines. But he knew the Celestials were already preparing their next assault, and when it came, it would be even more brutal. Fragments of the meteorite field stretched across several light-years, wreaking havoc on both wormhole travel and bridge transmissions. Although we won the battle, the Styx forces took no losses, and Tianja will still resurrect. When he does, he'll be more experienced than ever. To make matters worse, several Krypton gold weapons have gone missing. Carl may be developing his own Krypton gold arsenal. He approached Ethan with the battle report. Cracking Krypton gold technology won't be easy, he said. We encrypted the weapon designs using void-based protocols. Any attempt to analyze them without the proper key triggers an anti-dark matter discharge and fusion reaction. A single gram of Krypton gold can unleash enough energy to destroy an entire landmass. Ethan smiled. Is it really that dangerous? Hishi's eyes widened. Welcome to the Void Age, Ethan. Reality here will constantly surprise you, so you'd better get used to it. Chapter 298, Mastering the Art of Dying. The Age of the Void has completely overturned everything the angels once believed about the blazing sun. In Tiandao's history, the Void Age marks the pinnacle of cosmic development, so advanced, in fact, that it's hard to imagine what the universe looked like before these void civilizations emerged. Tiandao's civilization itself classifies the Void Age into 4 successive tiers: elementary, intermediate, advanced, and, at the summit, super void civilizations. Each tier corresponds to a progressively higher mastery of void-based technology. Remarkably, even the most primitive void civilization can effortlessly overwhelm a super god-era society. Take, for example, the legendary Tao-Ti King Shi-Ho. His void engine might seem rudimentary at first glance, yet it incorporates the capabilities of an intermediate concept rewriter, placing him squarely in the intermediate void tier. In practice, of course, these engines are far more sophisticated than theoretical classifications suggest. Meanwhile, Ethan sat at the head of the chamber, guiding Hexy and the others through the fundamentals of void mechanics. After all, they were not just students but members of his inner circle, his chosen, and it was only natural they grasped the complexities of void technology as he did. Ethan studied He-She for a moment before he began. The Galaxy Power Void engine I gave you isn't just another prototype. It's a fully multifunctional void engine, capable of manipulating matter, energy, space, even genetic codes and abstract concepts. Only a civilization in the primary void era could ever hope to forge something like this, and even then, the odds are astronomical. Statistically, fewer than 1% of intermediate void civilizations manage to produce a truly powerful, all-purpose void engine. He-She nodded thoughtfully. She'd already run dozens of diagnostics on her own engine. Its raw output and stability far exceeded any other model she'd ever seen. What she hadn't fully appreciated was the sheer breadth of its capabilities, not just the basic space-time mass-energy functions, but the deeper, more speculative controls over genes, conceptual frameworks, and fundamental rules. Space-time and energy manipulation are just the starting point, Ethan went on. Once you master those, you can begin probing the deeper layers, altering genetic structures, reshaping abstract constructs, even rewriting the operational rules of a system. That's the path to becoming a true super-void civilization. Ethan knew the stakes better than most. In the Super Seminary universe, void technology ranged from creation particles to infinite gems, but this engine represented something entirely new. In later stages of study, legends said even Karl, the so-called god of death, had discovered ways to tweak and redefine space itself, and had used that knowledge to attempt time travel. It was an outrageous idea, but with the comprehensiveness built into the Galaxy Power Void engine, nothing would be impossible. And with He-She at the controls, they were closer than ever to crossing that threshold. Ethan leaned back, frowning at the schematics spread across the table. You want me to rewrite the definitions of time, space, matter, and energy? Void technology really is terrifying. He-She's eyes lit up. She could barely contain her excitement. Terrifying? You've got no idea. With true void tech, we could develop a fifth-generation divine body. Think about it. Virtual real conversion, using void manipulation to redefine and rewrite the very state of your divine avatar in an instant. Even a void engine shrunk to atomic scale could have its energy matrix rewritten on the fly. Ethan glanced over at Qilin and Du Qiangwei. Both women sat with arms crossed, their faces tight. They didn't need expository lectures. They absorbed facts instinctively. But to actually understand this level of theory, they might as well be reading hieroglyphs. And then there was Lengun, the angel from the super-god civilization, drifting irreverently through the world. At first glance, he looked no more scholarly than a streetwise blade for hire. Swordsman, yes. Philosopher, hardly. Ethan sighed. A fifth-generation divine body, you say? Has anyone actually worked out the practical steps yet? He-She leaned forward, her smile pure exhilaration. She was the only person in the room who still believed this was the most thrilling frontier of all. If Ethan ever let that demon queen into the conversation, well, she'd be utterly spellbound. Ethan's invitation went unanswered. Liang Bing still hesitated to enter. Instead, he remained near the doorway as Ethan turned to the rest of the team. We already have our plans, Ethan announced. He-She, your next assignment is clear. Dedicate yourself to the super space-time gene and the fifth-generation divine body project. You won't be commanding our forces. That's Panjen's job. This will be a long war, and we need you focused on breakthroughs in the lab, not tactics on the battlefield. He-She gave a crisp nod. Ethan regarded him thoughtfully. The super space-time gene is the one Liang Bing was investigating, correct? We want to leverage it to develop a void-based ability that can literally rewrite time's parameters? He's exactly right, He-She replied. By channeling the void gene through the super space-time blueprint, we could, in theory, redefine temporal constants, speed up aging, slow motion, even freeze events altogether. At that, Raina, born and raised in the Sun civilization, where energy mastery defines one's status, leaned forward, confusion on her face. Ethan, remind me again, what do you mean by redefine energy? Ethan smiled, turning to face her. Energy, at its core, is merely conversion and utilization. If you master the technology to rewrite an energy signature, you could hijack someone else's power source. Imagine rewriting your metabolic requirements so that instead of drawing on food, your body demands dog droppings. Before Reyna could react, Ethan snapped his fingers. A sudden wave of weakness struck her. Her vision blurred, her limbs went limp, and a desperate craving surged through her mind. She staggered, mumbling incoherently about finding, of all things, dog waste to restore her strength. Ethan watched impassively as Reyna collapsed into a chair, her eyes wide with shock. The demonstration was complete. In the war to come, control over energy, and even the laws of time, would be the ultimate weapon. Reyna wasn't a void machine hybrid, so her reflexes were all natural and razor-sharp. She blinked in surprise. Light energy no longer affects me. Ethan, switch it back, now. She threw herself into channeling pure sunlight, but her super gene engine spat it out as invalid input. Desperate, she had to tap into raw void energy just to stay online, and the strain almost drove her mad. Ethan didn't hesitate. He flicked a switch on the device at his belt. Done. Almost instantly, Reyna's diagnostics snapped back to normal. Her energy reserves surged to full. It was as if nothing at all had happened. Only the log of the dark energy spike told her otherwise. She stared at the readout in disbelief. This is the Void's power? It's unlike anything I've ever felt. Even though she'd watched the Void obliterate the Liang civilization, none of that had prepared her for this. As the goddess of the sun, she commanded incredible power, but here, she'd been completely outmatched. Hexie watched quietly, her brow furrowed. That must be concept rewriting in action, right? She said, changing the fundamental properties of energy itself. Reyna could only nod, still shaking as she tried to comprehend how a single adjustment had flipped the balance of cosmic forces and thrown her world into chaos. No, that's only the energy definition function. Ethan corrected he/she. Concept rewriting includes that too, but definition and rewriting are more advanced. They not only define energy, they can also reshape gravity around a target, suppress energy-driven technology, block the target's thought processes, even overturn the law of energy conservation. He/she nodded, finally understanding. It was an easy mistake. After all, Karl, the god of death, had pioneered both concept definition and rewriting. I get it, he/she said, but I'm not the one commanding this war. That responsibility still lies with Pan Zhen. He/she spoke the truth. Pan Zhen had battlefield experience, albeit limited. His only recorded engagement was the duel against Sun Wukong, a clash that crippled the Liang civilization and cost it many super warriors. But that defeat spoke less to Pan Zhen's skill and more to Liang's relative weakness at the time. Now the Tiandao civilization stood unrivaled, a true superpower among superpowers. If Pan Zhen failed to win this campaign, the only honorable exit would be suicide. He's becoming more and more adept at deflecting our strikes, Lord Pangentian, reported the Heavenly Marshal. Pangentian regarded him coolly. They've died and come back so many times that even a pig, forced to descend repeatedly, would learn to counter us. The Marshal bowed. Pangentian continued. Against the might of the Tiandao civilization, Tianja and the Triangle have no choice but to rely on mortal lives to slow our advance. Chapter 299, The Ultimate Weapon, Heavenly Second Day Sanction. How many times a villain could die depended entirely on how swiftly he could resurrect, and so far, every one of them had perished hundreds of times. Take, for example, the occasion when Death God Karl, unfamiliar with Void Age technology, recklessly experimented on Krypton gold and ended up blowing up the entire Death Song Academy. Of course, Karl himself remained unscathed. It was Snow and the 4 Knights of the Void who had to start over from scratch. Within weeks, they had rebuilt the Academy at a scale 100 times greater than before. After all, when you have unlimited resources, rebuilding is merely a matter of time. As for the Tiandao civilization, they owed a debt of gratitude to the Styx. Thank you for granting us this opportunity to train our troops, Pan Zhen said with quiet confidence. Once this battle is over, heaven will boast millions of new, battle-hardened warriors. Pan Zhen saw no possibility of defeat. The Tiandao's advantage was simply that overwhelming. Rumor has it that the rear fleets are now churning out a fully operational combat celestial body every single day. Even with boundless resources and limitless energy, mass-producing these warships is no small feat, unless you possess a void controller. With that device, raw materials need never be synthesized or painstakingly assembled in a factory. You simply print the vessel directly in the void, layer by layer, much like a colossal 3D model. Of course, as soon as Deathlord Karl got wind of the technique, he studied it relentlessly. The Great Clock Archives already held every known blueprint and combat algorithm for celestial bodies, so once Karl secured his own void controller, production skyrocketed. A god of science who is as humble as he is brilliant, and who watches every skirmish for fresh data, is a terrifying force. Any new gadget or tactic the Tiandao civilization unveils, Karl learns of it almost instantly, and crafts a countermeasure before it can ever see battle. Chapter 8. The Styx War Engines. The Tiandao armada had barely broken through the first defensive perimeter when they came face to face with an unexpected sight. Lined up before them were not Tianza's flesh and blood legions, but a phalanx of Styx combat automatons, sleek, armored war machines bristling with arcane weaponry. Styx civilization? They actually produce battle constructs? Commander Pan Zhen murmured in disbelief. He forced himself to recall the perilous moment when he'd once dared to threaten Karl, the god of death, and how Karl's magnanimity had spared his head. Now, staring down this mechanical army, he realized just how gracious that mercy had been. At the rear of the fleet, Admiral Liang Bing's face went ashen. "Atuo, Shaolun," she barked. "Fall back to the secondary rendezvous point. Find cover, now." Liang Bing had always assumed the Styx, the so-called Demon Queen's realm, had sealed itself off centuries ago, abandoning universal ambitions in favor of isolation. No amount of speculation could have prepared her for an army like this. Even if the Styx had spent 1,000,000 years refining their sorcery, she never imagined they could field such power. As the officer scrambled, Atuo hesitated. "Your Majesty, where exactly are we going?" Liang Bing froze. Where could they possibly hide? Their closest fallback point lay light years away through hostile space, and beyond it all, two titanic figures, the god of death Karl and Lord Ethan, were converging on this very battlefield. Whichever divine champion emerged victorious would claim dominion over the universe itself. She swallowed hard. In that moment, every escape route felt like a trap, yet they had no choice but to run, and hope that in the chaos to come, they might slip through the Styx war engines unscathed. Liang Bing watched the aftermath of the display and felt the weight of her choices pressing in on her. With the power those two had just unleashed, was there any corner of the known universe beyond their reach? She, as lost. If she'd grasped their strength sooner, she would have bent her will to the Tiandao civilization, and she wouldn't be roaming these starways like a stray dog with no home. Her indignation burned hot. She'd been the first to arrive here. She and Angel Leng had lagged behind, yet now she was the one trapped, exposed like a hunted mistress. Nearby, Pan Zhen stood rigid, his eyes fixed on the line of Tianza combat vessels that loomed on the horizon. Their hulls glowed with lethal potential, like a row of stalking beasts. "With these," he murmured, "the Sovereign cannot miss." He spoke under direct orders from Ethan. When the Tianza vessels unleashed their full might, the coming engagement would be decided by these floating bastions of war. But Ethan had grown weary of sparring with Karl, the death god. There was no thrill left in this cosmic cat-and-mouse game. Even Angel Yan, having witnessed the sheer devastation on both sides, now trembled with doubt. It was only a matter of time before she, too, threw in her lot with Tiandao. Anticipating that inevitable shift, Ethan had made his move. He handed Pan Zhen the ultimate weapon, a device so devastating that, once ignited, its blast would leave no question as to who reigned over these stars. Now, with the Tianza warships primed and Pan Zhen at the controls of Ethan's secret doomsday engine, the final gambit was unfolding. And Liang Bing, caught between loyalties and regrets, could only pray she had made the right call before the heavens themselves bowed to new masters. Ethan took a steadying breath and spoke with unwavering resolve. "Initialize Heavenly Punishment System. Identification code. Seal the beer bottle in Hoover Hall." The words poured from his lips in a single thunderous torrent, hundreds of millions of characters, strung together without a pause. In that instant, a pulse of energy radiated outward from the dark plane, and before him materialized an ethereal interface, the Heavenly Punishment Operating System. For a fleeting moment, Ethan smiled at the memory of his own joking suggestion, calling this power the burning heavenly weapon. But as the OS hollow forms glowed around him, he knew the name Heavenly Punishment was far more fitting. A crisp line of text scrolled into view. Heavenly Punishment strike activated. Target locked. This was his first time deploying the strike. He could only guess at its true destructive potential. Surely an attack capable of shattering even a combat celestial body shielded by a space-time barrier. Before him, the Styx battle constructs standing ready on the field began to warp and compress, as if caught in an invisible vice. Space itself, its length, width, and height, buckled under the command of the Void, primed to be remade by Ethan's will. Ethan stared at the holographic display, absorbing every line of text. According to the latest field report, a dimensionality reduction strike was more terrifying than any weapon humanity had ever faced. The moment such an attack contacts our three-dimensional universe, it drives one of its spatial dimensions toward infinite contraction. Gradually, every particle, planets, stars, even atoms, collapses, melting our world into a flat, two-dimensional plane. This process is irreversible. High-latitude regions of space collapse inward until all that remains is a compressed, flattened reality. Superstring theory tells us the cosmos has 10 spatial dimensions plus time. A dimensionality reduction strike doesn't simply shave off extra dimensions. It reaches into the familiar 3 and forces one to vanish. By curling and crushing that dimension, the strike dismantles our space from the inside out. What was once vast and volumetric becomes an inescapable sheet. Entire star systems wink out of existence, their matter stretched thin and reconstituted into a flat plane. In effect, the strike behaves much like a black hole, only far more indiscriminate. Whereas a black hole's immense gravity traps everything in its vicinity, a dimensionality reduction strike draws the entire structure of space itself toward collapse. Under general relativity, black holes arise from regions of extreme density and curvature of spacetime. This new weapon essentially weaponizes that curvature, applying it uniformly until the target universe, or any structure within it, no longer holds 3 dimensions. Ethan swallowed hard. If such a strike were unleashed on Earth, there would be no defense, no evacuation, and no survivors. All he'd ever known would be reduced to a line, and then a point, and finally, nothing at all. Ethan stood before them, voice calm but undercut with urgency, as the swirling black rift loomed like a wound in reality itself. Black holes form, he began, when stars far more massive than our sun exhaust their nuclear fuel and collapse under their own gravity. Their pull becomes so intense that not even light can escape. He paused, letting the enormity of that fact settle. Pan Zhen, eyes wide, took an involuntary step back. "What is that?" she whispered, nodding toward the shimmering membrane at the heart of the rift. Ethan drew a steady breath. "This," he said, "is the ultimate weapon of advanced spatial engineering, a two-dimensional foil. Born from hyper-concept rewriting, it's essentially divine retribution incarnate. There's no substance to it. No mass, no depth. Just a slice of pure space itself, identical to the void around us, except that it has only 2 dimensions." He watched Pan Zhen's face blanch. "Imagine our 3-dimensional universe as a mighty river flowing past a cliff. 4-dimensional space spilling into our realm would be like that waterfall, unstoppable and irreversible. Now picture our 3 dimensions folding down into just 2. In that collapse, 1 dimension shrinks to the microscopic. The result is a flat plane, a mere patch of area that immediately begins to stretch and engulf everything around it." Ethan took a step closer to the gaping void. Once that 2-dimensional sheet expands, it tears at the fabric of our reality. 3 dimensions unravel into 2, then to 1, until nothing at all remains. It's the ultimate cascade, space folding down upon itself until every last particle vanishes. He let the words hang between them, the air humming with tension. Around them, the black membrane shimmered and pulsed, as if already alive and hungry for more of their world. Ethan's voice rang out across the chamber. "What you're witnessing is the sky slag collapsing into a 2-dimensional plane. In the end, it will have no thickness, just a perfectly flat painting suspended in space." A stunned silence followed. Every eye was fixed on the radiant sheet that had formed before them, shimmering like a masterpiece floating in midair. It truly was a painting, each fragment of cosmic debris and every warring celestial body laid out in astonishing atom-by-atom precision. The level of detail was so exquisite it felt less like an image and more like a living, breathing world trapped on a single, impossibly thin canvas. Chapter 300 Dimensionality Reduction Strike Suppresses the Black Hole Engine. A silent canvas drifted through the void. Across its surface, the shattered remnants of war, debris, shattered starships, even the bodies of fallen warriors, hovered motionless, as if trapped in a cosmic painting. Above this eerie tableau, two figures trembled in shock. Huaye and Ruoning, lieutenants of the Death God's armada, their faces pale. It's space definition technology. Huaye managed at last, voice quivering. What kind of attack is this? Can we analyze it? Can we counter it? At their side stood Death God Karl, calm, inscrutable, his dark cloak billowing like mist in the emptiness. He regarded the floating scene with an almost scholarly interest. Yes, we can analyze it, he said, his tone level. And yes, we can learn to wield it ourselves, if we have the time. He turned his gaze to the immobile tableau once more. This is advanced void tech, an ability to redefine, to remodel space itself. It doesn't merely seal or destroy, it compresses the dimensional framework and holds its victims in stasis. Notice how the fragments of matter here retain every detail, every molecule intact, yet cannot break free. That is the true power of dimensional reduction. Ruoning swallowed hard. But even your black hole engine, Lord Karl, surely it can't withstand this? Karl's eyes gleamed with cold determination. Not as long as this technique is deployed, he admitted. Our black hole generator relies on absolute gravity within a fixed dimensional field. Compress the dimensions around it, and its singularity loses cohesion. Even our mightiest engine would falter. The two lieutenants exchanged a glance of dawning terror. They had fought countless horrors under Karl's command, yet nothing had prepared them for Tiandao civilization's newest weapon. Somewhere beyond the stagnant painting, Ethan, the young prodigy of the Tiandao vanguard, watched from his command vessel. He waited, poised to press his advantage, knowing full well that once dimensional reduction took hold, victory would follow swiftly. In the stillness of that suspended battlefield, as every particle lay still like a stroke of divine brushwork, the fate of the war teetered on the brink of a new, unimaginable frontier. Chapter 12 The Void Code. Ethan stood before the fractured remnants of sky slag and the battered war celestial bodies arrayed on the obsidian dais. In theory, restoring them to their original forms was simple. Space itself only needed to be redefined. But the moment he powered up the grand chronometer, its glyphs flared red. The ancient mural before him was encrypted with a void code. Until that cipher was broken, no spatial redefinition could reverse these relics to their pristine states. The void technology revealed by the Tiandao civilization had left even Death God Karl awestruck. Unlike the fledgling void-era cultures scattered through known space, Tiandao had long since mastered the art of nothingness, achieving a maturity Karl had only dreamed of. For years, as the universe's foremost void scholar, he'd pored over every scrap of data. Yet Holy Kesha's edicts had cruelly barred him from conducting stellar black hole experiments, and his own unauthorized trials had produced nothing more than fleeting anomalies. Now, Karl was forced to rely on the star drive breakthroughs of the Blazing Sun civilization. Only the cataclysmic collapse of a controlled black hole could yield the void matter he needed to crack Tiandao's encryption. Without that rare substance, the chronometer would remain powerless, and Ethan's hope of restoring the sealed sky would hang forever on a cipher he could not yet solve. Ethan pressed a gloved hand against the slender control panel and frowned. Raw materials in this sector were all but exhausted, and even though Death God Karl's void tech was every bit a match for the legendary Tiandao civilization, he simply didn't have the means to use it at full power. Of course, that wasn't the end of Karl's advantage. A little earlier, when Ethan had deliberately ignored the Holy Kesha's warnings and detonated the miniature black hole, he'd seized the opportunity to siphon off vast quantities of void matter. Most of it went into upgrading the ship's black hole drive, allowing Ruoning to finally install a genuine void engine. That alone was a breakthrough. Ethan had scooped up the prime cosmic core and dismissed it as worthless, but Karl knew the real prize lay elsewhere. His true leap forward came from the Peacock black hole in the heart of the Peacock galaxy. Its mass dwarfed ordinary singularities, and its crushed supermatter density was off the charts. Though the original plan netted only 5 discrete void particles, the sheer volume of void matter Carl extracted enabled him to fashion a small arsenal of void-powered gear. Yet even with all that, the Death God had to rely on his gargantuan chronometer to run star drive calculations and to ponder the subtle workings of solar radiation. Ruo Ning, watching the final energy readings stabilize, finally broke the silence. "Can you reverse the conversion? Recover the void matter to its original state?" Carl's pale mask-like face cracked into a ghost of a smile. "That, my dear Ruo Ning, is precisely the next experiment on my agenda. What I'm really asking," Huaye pressed, anxiety cracking his calm tone, "is whether you can stop this effect from impacting me." Ruo Ning, ever vigilant as the frontline commander, tensed at his side. Had she not dashed forward so quickly, she might already be dead. Ethan, the god of death, ran a hand through his hair. "No," he said at last. "It isn't cost-effective. It'd be far faster to resurrect you afterward, and there's simply no way to block King Huaye's void rewrite ability, unless I instantly code a countermeasure to prevent void rewriting, which I don't have time for." Huaye's expression fell. "Then what about my black hole?" Ethan shook his head. "Even your black hole lies inside the rewrite's range. This is an advanced spatial rewriting technique. Nothing, not even a black hole, can withstand it. The only escape is to flee at light speed. That way, you preserve your own spatial structure before it can be rewritten." In that moment, Ethan saw clearly the fatal flaw in a dimensional compression strike. The speed of light isn't affected by dimensional compression, but black holes, not even light itself, can escape it. And this new weapon is designed to suppress black holes. So the Tiandao civilization has discovered a way to neutralize my king's black hole engine? Huaye's eyes went wide. His trump card was precisely that engine. Though he could accelerate a singularity's formation, he could never fully control it. He'd even planned to surround the Styx Nebula with a defensive ring of micro-black holes if its shields were ever breached. He never imagined the Tiandao could actually attack. Yet here they were, wielding a dimensional reduction strike. With their ability to rewrite the very definition of space, not even a black hole could withstand the blow. Any singularity he unleashed from now on would be rendered powerless against the Tiandao. If this was true, it explained how the Tiandao civilization had risen to supreme power in the unknown universe. They possessed a technology capable of negating even the mightiest black holes. Chapter 7. The Council of Shadows. In the silent vastness at the edge of the known universe, Ethan's abilities had grown beyond anything the galaxy had seen. Whenever he encountered a star or a black hole, he could simply banish it, clearing a path straight toward his objective. In these uncharted reaches, conventional wormhole transportation proved useless. It offered neither obstacle nor advantage to his crusade. Deep within the obsidian halls of the High Council, 3 formidable beings gathered around a crystalline table that pulsed with ghostly light. Carl, the god of death, often called Death Carl, tapped his skeletal fingers against the smooth surface. His voice was cold and precise. "Enough about their survival on the fringe," he said. "My question is this. If the black hole drive no longer deters the Tiandao civilization, how do we hope to stop them?" Huaye bristled, her black and gold eyes flashing with impatience. "Exactly. Without that edge, what chance do we have?" Ruo Ning, the icebound heiress of another realm, nodded in grim agreement. "I would accept an honorable death in battle," she added, "but to perish for nothing, if surrender means we live to fight another day, and perhaps save countless worlds, then so be it." Death Carl leaned back, the dim light casting deep shadows across his hollow sockets. A soft, amused chuckle escaped him. "You speak of our space engine, I presume? You believe it can fill the void left by the black hole drive?" Huaye's breath caught. Have you developed an even more powerful void engine in secret?" Death Carl's laugh echoed through the chamber. "You misunderstand. The strength of a true void engine isn't measured only by frequency or algorithm. It lies in the mastery of the void itself, a force far more profound than a simple black hole program. If we intend to challenge the Tiandao civilization, we'd better learn its true power, before they learn ours." Ethan had devoted his research to the black hole engine purely as a factory, spawn countless singularities, then bombard them with starlight to harvest vast reserves of void matter and void particles. In essence, it wasn't a weaponized engine at all, but a production-type void engine. To death, Carl, upgrading it was simple. Just integrate the void function into the existing design. Then, does that mean I can perform this dimensional reduction attack myself? Huayer's eyes sparkled. He hadn't fully absorbed Death Carl's technical breakdown, but the core idea was clear. It's certainly within the realm of possibility, Death Carl agreed. What we can't do yet is rewrite large-scale spatial structures. He waved off any further questions. The nuanced distinction between redefining space's coordinates and reconstructing its underlying framework, both high-order void manipulations, wasn't worth unpacking right now.